Oh, are you breaking? You're very close to breaking. Sorry about the shine. I can't really do much about that. Maybe if I flip one of those flappies down. Of course, then I won't be able to flap her down. Did that help any? Did it make a difference to anybody's life? Not a bit of difference. Is anything I'm putting away? Go, random cats. You're needed. My God, does that actually work? Does it skew the light enough for you to see upon what I am drawing? I'm going to be drawing more over here. So let's see if we can work on that angle a bit. Hate all of that. There we go. You can kind of see what I'm working on. What to listen to? I just listened to the latest chapter and I don't want to hear it again. Maybe I'll listen to the older chapters because I seem to still be in love with those. By the way, if you're new to my live stream, this is the world's most boring live stream where I sit here and I work on some artwork and I listen to something on the YouTube and I ignore everything else in reality around me. Thanks for stopping in. You're welcome to stay, hang out. If there's a chat going on, you can pop in there. If not, I'm often used for having as background noise. You know, if you're just kind of finishing up the dishes or just kind of vacuuming or folding the laundry before you go to bed, so you feel like, you know, somebody's watching you, so you're going to feel productive because of society. But yeah, other than that, I'm just going to see if I can get this guy done up tonight and maybe work on some cat pictures. And yeah, thanks for stopping by, everyone. Okay. I don't need that. Well, I do. I listened to 7 times today, so I shouldn't do another one. Sure, we'll stop in here.
Captain Monahan nodded.
Agreed. From the Federation's perspective, they could think they were blindsided. They see predation as some form of wicked corruption.
I cast a summoned glance at the video screen. The pleasure of the fleet's victory was short-lived, as was any notion that these primates offered a reliable source of protection. My desire for friendship with the Terran Guard was gone. In its place was a blistering pain. After everything the Archer had taken from me and my people, it felt like a personal betrayal for these humans to place blame on us. Memory transcription subject, Captain Soblin, Federation Fleet Command. Date, standardized human time, October 8th, 2136. No matter how often I replayed the Archer's words in my head, I couldn't understand why the Terran observers would trust them. It was at the humans' clutches that the traumatized refugees were nursed back to health. They risked life and limb and lost hundreds of ships in pursuit of our survival. How could they reconcile what they'd seen with the prison's narrative? The primates had loathed every aspect of the cattle ship and acted distraught at the condition of the victims. I had wondered how one could tell when a predator was truly hungry until I saw the darkness in their eyes that day. There was a bottomless abyss of rage inside their pupils. It was a much-needed reminder of human volatility. My service on this vessel was for nothing, I bemoaned. What if humans decide to give the cattle back? Have I just helped the Archer land a game-changing ally? The door to my quarters clicked open, and a wheelie Carlos strode in with a vegetable platter. He placed the tray on the bedside table without any sort of apology. The food was soaked in some clear fluid. It felt viscous against my clothes as I poked it. Had the omnivores coated the plants in an animal secretion? Maybe it was saliva, or worse. Ugh. Why the fuck are these vegetables wet? I snarled, with as much hostility as I could muster. Disgusting. Carlos crossed his arms.
It's olive oil, Sovlin. Relax. You might even like it. Lots of healthy plant fats.
I don't want anything from you, Predator. I grabbed an orange-coloured slice and flung it at his cheek. The human barely reacted, only wiping the oil off with his chest belt. If you still feel empathy, shoot me now, before I watch your kind turn in every species with a semblance of decency.
You're overreacting, and you are not going to refer to me as Predator again.
Why not? You defended the fucking Archer, then accused me of deception. I don't want to see your face.
Just listen to me, alright? 60 seconds.
Renewed disgust flooded my chest as the guard's binocular eyes pleaded with mine. I knew humanity didn't want sapient livestock of their own, but defending the act made them equally culpable. No moral race would rewrite the tragedy of first contact and the unspeakable losses that befell every species. The image from my nightmare of Carlos roasting over a fire seemed much more realistic. He just proved that he could see Gurjeet as food. This man, beast, was a genuine kind, and yet I had grown attached to him. What happened to throwing the axle in the cattle pens where they belonged? I slashed my claws across the pillow several times and struggled not to turn them on the human. I will never agree with you. Don't waste your breath.
I'm not asking you to agree with me. I'm asking you to understand.
Carlos eyeballed the decimated pillows as fluff was flung across my form.
Look, I listened to your spiel on torturing an innocent human and tried to empathize with you. Don't you think you can at least try to see where I'm coming from?
The Greys are your fellow predators. They're more like people to you than us.
This isn't about the Arxosoblin. It's about the Federation and how they've treated us. The prejudice and the hatred.
That is because of the Greys. They won't stop until we're destroyed. Erased.
But can't you see how it looks from our side? Why we would think you're capable of killing and terrorizing predators when you've been hell-bent in our extinction since you discovered us.
I chewed at my claws, considering the welcome that humanity had received to the galaxy. Governor Tava had made them aware of the Federation's extermination plans. The only reason their species still lived was due to misinterpreted sensor data. The second their survival was discovered, the entire organization convened to discuss a raid on Earth. There were entire religions formed around the eradication of predators, including the one on my world. Most individuals the UN tried to contact rejected the idea that humans could be civilized. This was typically due to the belief that their ilk were incapable of empathy, cooperation, or basic bonding. My experiences proved the error of that prior research. In Carlos's pause, I would definitely resent the Federation. Maybe it would seem within the realm of possibility that we had done a similar thing to other predators. I guess. But I know better than to believe in Arx's lies, I growled. However bad you think they are, they're worse. The human lowered his eyes.
I'm not saying Koth is telling the truth. I'm saying he could be, because I know how much you hate our existence. I'll believe whatever the evidence says.
Then I'll help you prove it wrong. Only because I'm sorry for what the Federation has done to humans. I regret how much it has soured your opinion of us. And I know my part in that.
That's all I ask. Are we cool?
Yes.
Good. Because the captain wants to see you, and I don't want to explain that you're pouting.
I am not pouting. The Predator's lips adopted a slight curvature, which seemed indicative of amusement. I was beginning to understand how Slanet could read emotions in their snarls. It was just a way of compensating for their missing tails. Did humans ever envy that additional appendage that the rest of us took for granted? It was a miracle they were so graceful and balanced without it. I shoveled the pourful of vegetables down my gullet and dismounted from my bed. Carlos steered us back toward Monaghan's office, and we traversed the ship corridors in a comfortable silence. Amazement rippled through me as I realized my spines were lying flat. The second I noted my proximity to the Predator, the return to full bristle. Yikes, that is starting to hurt. Why did I have to think about it? The doors to our destination slid open and distracted me from the latest dose of fear chemicals. The UN captain was reviewing one clip when we entered. A curt exchange between Koth and Ross. Her eyes were bloodshot like she had been poring over footage all night. Humans could be obsessive, that was for certain.
Want peace? What do you see as acceptable end conditions for the war?
The Terran interrogator asked.
You don't get it. There is us and them.
Saliva oozed from the reptilian captain's fans as it spoke.
There can only be peace when every Federation planet is dead. That is acceptable.
Ross narrowed his eyes.
What if that is not acceptable to us? Then you're stupider than I took you for, and you'll die with the Federation. You can watch the play for beating your race before your extinction.
Captain Monaghan punched some notation into her holopad. Her sigh sounded flustered, but she didn't seem concerned by the extermination threat. If I didn't know better, I would think that question had been aimed at finding out if diplomatic avenues between us and the Greys were possible.
So there would be no room for negotiation.
The UN interrogator pressed.
Humanity cares for one alien species above all others. They are a part of our pack, and we will not abandon them.
Koth thought for a moment. Its pupils darted from side to side as if it were scanning its memory banks. The cold intelligence on display was appalling, and the Terran's reckless divulgence alarmed me. Humans were painting a target on Venlo Prime if they publicized that alliance to the enemy. Poor Tava. The species she saved from certain death is trying to get her killed in return. Careless, idiot monkeys.
The Venlo.
Koth decided.
You've got to be kidding. That explains their thwarting what should have been a simple border raid.
Ross was quiet. The human maintained eye contact and waited for the prisoner to continue. He did not confirm or deny the reptilian's guess, which was affirmation of itself. The Axis slammed its snout against the table.
One of the weakest, most frightful species of them all. The Venlo are beneath you. That is for us to decide. Surely you see that they're a liability to you. What use could they be? You refer to them as packmates, not food or slaves. That means equals. I meant what I said, Koth. An attack on them is an attack on us. We would die for them, happily. But why? Because they defended us from the Federation, despite the fact that we're predators. They were the only ones who helped us. Humanity would never repay such a debt with anything less.
The Axis shook its head, huffing with disgust. The abomination was repulsed by the interrogator's soft rhetoric. This was Ross's worst miscalculation yet. Still, it was a relief to hear that the humans would stand by the Venlo if nothing else. I thought they were ashamed of their prey friends for a moment. A growl bumped in Koth's throat.
What is it you're asking? We could discuss sparing one species if that's what you require to join us. That, and the release of every Venlo held as livestock, unharmed.
The human barked.
You expect us to give up millions of cattle we already have. We're starving as is. Surrendering any of our existing food supply is a non-starter.
Captain Monaghan tapped a button on her console and the video feed paused. I knew she was the one who directed the interrogator to barter over lives, like any mundane commodity. She hadn't even reacted to the promise of Venlil as food. These familiar faces were leaning into their predator roots a bit too much ever since they started interacting with the Greys. Fortunately, this foray had gone nowhere. That last statement sealed the finality of a diplomatic impasse. The Arxa would never part ways with their precious quarry, by Koth's own admission. Regardless, the offer to spare the Venlo further harm was empty talk. The Predator would say whatever it thought afforded the best chance of escape. Would the humans abandon this folly now? It was insulting that they would even pose such questions. Monaghan sighed.
Well, it's a start. The Federation said the Greys were incapable of negotiation.
You're negotiating on whether your best friends deserve to have their pups tortured and hunted for kicks, I spat incredulously.
Sovlin, you are out of line.
Carlos tugged at my scruff, which snapped my attention to his flabbergasted expression.
She doesn't answer to you. You said it yourself.
It's all right.
Monaghan growled.
If we rescue every enslaved Venlil, I don't imagine Tava will care how we achieve it. Especially if that option would negate years of suffering for those people and save Earth significant loss of life.
The human guard narrowed his eyes.
There's a reason we get along with Tava. Her government is actually reasonable.
Implying that mine is not. Irritation swelled in my chest. So you're really moving forward with this plan?
Nothing has been decided, Sovlin, because it's not my decision. My job is to weigh options for the UN, and to see if talking is even a possibility. Turns out, it just might be.
The Terran captain replied. You didn't even mention Khajiits or any other species to Koth. Let's say you saved the Venlil. Then you're just gonna let everyone else rot?
Humanity does not believe any sapient deserves such treatment. We would never be involved with, or agree with those practices.
Monaghan raised her eyebrows, emphasizing her predatory gaze.
However, if we can only save one race, you should understand why the Venlil are our top priority.
It's still wrong. I refuse to help you trade lives, and bargain with those demons.
Good thing that's not why I summoned you then. Now that we control the Cradle, we'd like your help with the Khajiit refugee crisis. They belong with their colonies or the Federation, but it's not so simple.
There was no need for further explanation from the captain. I grasped the dilemma that humanity was facing. It wasn't as easy as flying this ship to the nearest Khajiit colony and dropping them off. An inbound Terran transport would draw shoot-to-kill missile fire, no matter how slow their approach or polite their hail. The same problem would occur at any Federation outpost. Using the Venlil as a courier may not work either. They're considered predators by association at this point. However, with the humans potentially in cahoots with the Arxa, we had to get the Khajiit refugees out of their custody at once. Judging by the reaction to Koth's interview, The primates were susceptible to corrupting influences. It didn't take much to warp their good intentions and rope them into a dastardly scheme. The more I pondered it, the enemy's motives could stretch beyond escape. The offer of an alliance might be genuine, since the UN impressed so thoroughly in their early engagements. Humans had the power to decide the conflict for either side, and would only grow more dangerous with time. The Federation needed to straighten up our act and make sure the Terrans stayed in our corner. I had to do whatever was in my power to convince our galactic allies not to follow Khajiit mistakes. Antagonizing Earth made the Child Eaters look more palatable, even to noble soldiers like Monaghan and Carlos. Adding a second predator to the Axicide would turn this war into a demolition. Then we contact both my people and the Federation, I decided. I still have some sway. Monaghan grimaced.
How do we speak to your people? Your settlers might need to relocate. We don't have the resources to protect this region long term.
I'll tell you how to reach Khajiit government channels. If they still exist, that is. Be warned, they probably don't. The last I heard, the designated bunker was looking shaky. Carlos rubbed his neck anxiously.
Doesn't your Prime Minister hate us?
Perry had a change of heart. She would be a useful witness with the Federation regarding this whole debacle. Short of that, I'm probably your best mouthpiece. You know, being one of the few surviving and well-known Khajiit.
You're the best. We're doomed.
The UN guard groaned. Monaghan chuckled.
Let's see if the PM's alive before we pronounce our political death, Romero.
Look what you've got your captain thinking. Political death. I glowered at Carlos, knowing intimidation would have no effect. Thanks for the vote of confidence. He flashed his teeth.
No problem.
Whatever the Terrans might think of my reliability, the remnants of the Khajiit Union needed to do our part. Right now, the Venlil were the only incentive for Earth and her citizens to risk their hides. That needed to change before it was too late. I was going to impress upon anyone that would listen that humans were a species worth saving, even if we were saving them from their predator selves.
Memory transcription subject. Slonic, Venlil Space Corps. Date, Standardized Human Time, October 8th, 2136. When the science officer from Humanity's first contact team reached out about a fear study, I was a bit intimidated. Sarah Rosario had done extensive biological and environmental analysis and collaborated with Venlil scientists throughout their early behavioral research. Her talks comparing our psychology racked up millions of views, as did her controversial analysis on Venlil ecosystems. In a nutshell, Terran conservationists were less than thrilled with our biomanipulation. Sarah had lamented our efforts to wipe out predator species and discussed something she referred to as trophic cascades. The aspects she attributed to the absence of hunters were far-fetched, though she spoke at length about supposed examples from Earth. How could removing a terrestrial predator onto the ocean destroy vegetation or spread diseases? Humans can prove their own worth without grasping at straws. These arguments are just moronic. Besides her fringe theories, Sarah was a remarkable scientist with credentials in several fields. If anyone could find a way to break Venlil fear responses, it would be her. I knew the process could be traumatic, but I would do anything to leave my internalized feelings behind once and for all. I was tired of failing to protect my human friends.
Are you sure about this, Slonic?
Marcel growled as we approached the scientist.
If you're trying to be more human to appease me, please don't. I accept you for you.
I squeezed my tail around his wrist. Thanks, but I'm doing this for myself. I'm tired of being scared at the whims of my instincts. Tyler patted me on the back, a little harder than I would have liked. The blonde human accompanied our group to assist with any physical activities, since Marcel was still in recovery from his gunshot wounds. The UN military was involved with these experiments, so I knew part of it was seeing if I could be shaped into a proper soldier. Dread festered already, knowing simulated combat was in my future. Why do you keep helping me, Tyler? We haven't known each other long, and you must have other things to do, I said.
Dude, I wanted to be in the buddy program, just like you two. The UN turned me down.
The soldier towered over me, and his blue eyes glittered like ice crystals.
They didn't think I would mess with the Venlil, I guess. Too tall and too scary.
Marcel frowned.
You were turned down because you're not vegetarian, though your stature probably doesn't help your case.
Aliens are the most exciting thing to ever happen to mankind. I want to be part of this all. But maybe they were right. I always stick my foot in my mouth with the Venlil.
I studied the flesh-eating soldier, imagining I had never seen a human before. Marcel was a daunting hunk of muscle when I first glimpsed him. His shadow smothered me, and his forward-facing eyes were like spotlights peering down from above. It was only seeing him at his most vulnerable, cold and afraid, that squashed that threatening aura. That said, my friend barely came up to Tyler's shoulders. The sandy-haired soldier was tall, even by human standards. His dietary choices would have given everyone at the outpost the creeps. It was likely something would be blurted out about dogs and persistence hunting at a stage when his partner wasn't ready to accept that. Still, there were lots of good memories to be formed with Tyler if he could see past the bulky predator. He was friendly to a fault, considering my emotions at times when I was harsher than he deserved. There was selflessness in the way he didn't hesitate to carry me off the cradle. I hoped other Venville would give him a chance someday. My nuzzle against his arm would startle the big guy. I appreciate you, Tyler. Your heart is in the right place. Don't give up. Appearances aren't everything.
That was actually sensitive and thoughtful.
Marcel feigned a gasp, and I giggled as the whites of his eyes expanded to cartoonish dimensions.
Who are you? And what have you done with Slonic?
Oh, shut up. You humans have a lot to take in, and you know it. Tyler placed a hand on his hip, striking a goofy pose.
Well, take it all in, buddy. Appearances are worth something. 210 pounds of glorious, rugged.
Yeah. You're the pinnacle of male perfection.
Marcel snorted, shoving the other soldier with his good arm.
Keep walking. The Secretary General doesn't want to see that.
The Secretary General? Why would Maya be here? I followed my human's gaze and surveyed the Terran scientists camped by the machines. Sarah was taking an inventory of her equipment while other predators were staring at us. My nerves flared as I realized most humans present were in military uniforms. I knew these experiments would have combat applications, but I didn't think martial leaders were calling the shots. Secretary General Meyer looked less amused with my pack's antics than I was. Tomfoolery was not his favorite pastime. He was in a heated discussion with several people in green and brown uniforms. The color scheme looked like a tree threw up on it, but they didn't seem the type that would appreciate such comments. Sarah waved us over to her.
Long time no see, Slonic. Glad you're back in one piece.
I'm hoping to stay that way. Why are all these important humans here? I squeaked. She lowered her eyes.
There's no easy way to say this, but I'm afraid our work will have to move much faster than I anticipated. We don't have much time.
You heard the news from Vendel Prime?
Secretary General Meyer dejected. Marcel nodded.
We did. Ambassador Williams is alive, and he returned with some new friends.
I was glad my human piped up, because this ambush had thrown me off my prepared responses. Was this about helping our new allies with their own first contact programs? Maybe trying to create an easier bonding process?
The picture of the Zolin.
Tyler began.
Cerulean!
Sarah and I corrected at the same time.
The Cerulean on the human shoe is everywhere. My man was just like, oh, a predator. Looks like a warm, comfy pillow to me.
Secretary Meyer breathed an irritated sigh.
The other news. The Crocodile are leading a crusade against us. We have less friends than foes. Not that even our friends are likely to help. Simple math dictates that we are at a numerical disadvantage.
The thousands of ships the birds have been massing represent a multi-species coalition.
One of the uniformed personnel chimed in.
Projections indicate they'll set sail today and arrive on October 16th or 17th.
Horror coursed through my veins as the gravity of the Terran's revelation set in. How could these humans be so calm at the prospect of an attack on Earth? Marcel and Tyler both were subdued, but their reaction wasn't on the level it should be. This was a raid with the intention of turning their verdant home into a barren rock, the same as the Arx's vile tactics. The Crocodile were one of the few species that could head a functional offensive. They boasted a high aggression since they evolved to scare off predators. During the initial phases of the Arxa War, the aliens conjured up the technology that allowed us to regroup. While nobody was on the humans' level, they possessed some tactical acumen. Why not launch a preemptive strike like you did with the Gajeeds? I demanded. Maya frowned.
It's too late now, but it wouldn't have worked. Most of their ships are already spaceborne, so we couldn't catch them sleeping like the Gajeeds. They concentrated forces around their stations heavily.
But you're excellent fighters. You have advanced ships now. Nobody can rival a Predator's military prowess.
They outnumbered us 10 to 1 if we sent the entirety of our fledgling armada. They also had home turf advantage and orbital lasers around every base. You might as well launch the UN fleet into a supernova. You'd get the same results.
Sarah sighed.
Our best hope was for Noah to convince them to stand down. That didn't work out.
I turned my gaze toward Marcel, noticing how his gaze drifted to his whole pack. My human's thoughts were transparent at times. He was worried about the welfare of Amelia and Lucy, who remained back at his residence. The new child would never feel safe again if she watched another world endure destruction. That's if anyone survives the attack on Earth. The entire human race is in jeopardy, I realized. We need to get everyone off-world before it's too late. I pinned my ears against my head. You know the Crocodile are coming. There's still time. Evacuate Earth.
And go where? Anyone who wishes to leave will have the opportunity, including you.
The Secretary General growled.
This is our home. We've built everything here. It's the only planet we've got.
Marcel ruffled the stray tuft on my head, gentle and reassuring as ever.
Oh, soldiers, we're going to stay and fight.
No! I shrieked. Come with me to Vendel territory. We'll take care of you. All of you. Please, don't die, humans.
It's okay, buddy. Go back to your world. I want you to be safe.
Tears rolled down my face at the thought of Marcel perishing by a crocodile horde. It brought back unwanted memories, like the scorching pain in my chest when I thought he was about to be shot in front of me. We had been to hell and back together, and it finally seemed like our lives could settle down. Now, without warning, the light at the end of the tunnel was extinguished. If Sarah's team were cancelling my experiment, I understood. Humans had bigger things to worry about than my fragile instincts. Scrap the study. It's not a priority. I rubbed a paw against my cheek, catching the water rolling down my fur. You don't have to worry about diplomatic fallout from me. I want to fight with you. Marius shook his head.
We can discuss integration to your UN vessel if the results of your training are positive. However, I recommend that you lend that option some serious thought, as high casualties are expected.
I appreciate that humans honor your word, but you do not have time to fix me. Don't waste.
This study is very important, Slanik, for the survival of our species.
The Secretary General crossed his arms, a calculating scowl on his face.
Look, if Earth falls, the Vendel will be custodians of the few remaining humans. It will be up to you to rebuild our population and to protect our survivors from threats.
Don't talk like that. Please.
I have to. Our research could point you in the right direction and make your soldiers stronger.
If things don't work out for us, this is humanity's parting gift.
Sarah finished.
I speak for all of us in saying that I hope the Vendel prosper.
My tail drooped between my legs, and it was all I could do not to collapse in defeat. The Terran's odds of defending such an onslaught were slim. Every human I knew could be dead in little over a week. Hearing the UN leaders speak as if that probability was likely crushed my hopes that the Sol system had some predatory tricks tucked away. Their species didn't deserve this fate. The humans faced their impending doom with fearlessness, so I needed to accept reality too. If my participation strengthened the Vendel military in the UN's absence, I would do whatever was asked of me. No matter the mental duress this exacted on me, it was worth it. I swallowed hard. Thanks for telling me yourself, sir. Where do we begin? Sarah rummaged through a box of her belongings and retrieved a red fabric sleeve. It took all of my willpower not to shy away as she took it over my face. Her curved nails waded through my fur like daggers. I couldn't see at all for a split second, which added to the panic. How could placing coverings on my head impart anything? They have to have a good reason. These predators will not hurt you. Humans will never hurt you. I repeated internally. The human scientist was gentle as she tucked a pair of straps behind my ears. My vision returned as two cutouts fell over the eyes, positioning. It felt like I was suffocating in the mask, but the fit was correct enough. Was it custom made to my dimensions? Its purpose must lie beyond adding color to my silver fur. I realized that something was wrong with my sight as soon as I processed my surroundings. Where I had seen Tyler standing beside me, there was only a dark shadow. Marcel's comforting snarl was obscured as well. This headgear had barriers to take away my periphery. Was this what it was like to have predator sight? Sarah clapped her hands.
Perfect.
You good, Slanik?
Marcel's voice echoed from my left, and I had to turn my head to look at him. The motion felt alien.
You look miserable, like a fish out of water.
It was tough to describe how I felt, to be unaware of the object in my vicinity. Simply carrying out a conversation was unnatural. No wonder humans got jumpy if I came up beside them without thinking. Something could sneak up behind me now, and I wouldn't realize it was there until it pounced. I'll survive, I grumbled. You're going to make me calmer, Sarah, by limiting my vision. No offense, but I thought limited optical range was a downside to being human.
Your instincts are triggered by things approaching from the side or behind you. You're easily distracted by your surroundings because you see too much at once. I think this will help your spook reflex to focus on a single target at a time.
I get it. Like horse blinders.
Tyler stated in a glummer tone than usual. Like what? Maybe I'm making the wrong inference again, but it sounds like they've tried to force their tunnel vision on other prey animals. The scientist nodded.
Precisely. Slanik, why don't we try a combat simulator with the blinders? If it doesn't help, or you really don't like it, we'll drop it.
Fine. Cyrus steered me into a separate room with a light touch. The enclosed space appeared to be an imitation of a patrol ship cabin, complete with controls and sensor readouts. Where the viewport should sit, there were blank screens. I imagined they would reflect Archer ships in a few minutes. Tyler squeezed into the co-pilot's seat, a downcast expression on his face. The tall
Nice,
human
sweetie.
we could be in a dogfight that was very real a short time from now. The stakes of our next mission would be his entire planet. This flight presented no tangible threat, and I needed to keep that fact at the forefront of my mind. Somewhere, deep inside my soul, there had to be some bravery lurking. All that mattered was gaining admission to the UN's last stand, and proving that prey genetics didn't define us. These virtual enemies were going to have hell to pay. Memory transcription subject, Slanik, then null space core. Date, standardized human
What?
time,
Hey,
October 8th,
come here.
2136.
Come here.
The humans instructed me to place a wraparound headset over my ears. I was impressed with how they had modified their technology with
Come
Fen
here.
Lullaby.
Yeah, okay.
Though I
Papa,
was the only one who would have kept to use it. The earpiece fed simulated audio alarms and hits. It also allowed Sarah to speak to me directly.
Slanik, I'm going to talk to you throughout this exercise. In time, I hope you will learn to do these things yourself.
She explained in a melodic voice.
Thoughts guide our actions. By changing your thoughts, you can unlearn negative behaviors.
I tilted my head. But that's the problem. You can't control your thoughts.
Well, not with that attitude. You didn't develop your thinking patterns overnight.
Sarah responded.
It takes time, effort, and understanding to make a self-adjustment. Mind if I ask you a few questions before we begin the simulation?
Hey,
Go for it.
stop
When
that.
was the first time you encountered a predator?
I failed to see the relevance of the question, but I decided to humor the human. If she thought delving into the origins of predatophobia would further her understanding, it wouldn't hurt to play along. The more background info she had on me, the better subject I would be. You saw the accident on TV, but that doesn't really count. Mother tried to shield us from those atrocities, I recall. Encounters with predators were uncommon on Venlo Prime, though occasionally one slipped through the cracks. Teams of investigators and armored vehicles would travel out to the site, scorching any area with evidence of a hunter's presence. There was no way we would leave them alive to reproduce and terrorize our settlements. Extermination officer was an occupation that paid well, but all the money in the world wouldn't be enticing enough for me. My parents took me for a walk in the local pasture, and there was a dead rodent on the sidewalk. Lots of blood. There were larvae all over it. News cameras turned up within minutes. A shudder rippled down my spine at the memory. The Yankees said a predator might be on the loose. The entire neighborhood was placed on a curfew by local police. Schools were closed indefinitely. Tyler couldn't hear the other end of the conversation, but he shot me a baffled look. The human's eyebrows arched up his forehead as though he couldn't believe what he was hearing. I think the words he mouthed were, "What the fuck?"
Tell me more about that. Did they find out what happened to the dead animal?
Sarah inquired. I gritted my teeth. It died of natural causes according to the autopsy. Everyone was relieved that there was no imminent threat, but that was the week I learned about food chains and our place on it.
How did that make you feel?
Scared. Powerless. I just couldn't believe there were animals that based their existence on killing.
I can tell this is difficult for you, Slanik. If I may, what conclusions did your childhood self reach about predators?
Predators had to be cruel and unfeeling to be able to stomach such violence. To eat that rotting corpse I saw.
The accident must have cemented those beliefs. I take it that was your initial feeling toward humans.
A horrified gasp came from my chest as I realized what I'd just said about predators. It had slipped my mind that I was talking to one while I was focusing on the emotional residue of that experience. There was the thoughtlessness Marcel teased me over. I'm sorry, that was too honest. I didn't mean to say I squeaked.
Relax. I'm not offended.
Sarah's voice was reserved and soothing, like the rustle of leaves in the wind.
I want you to be transparent with me, especially about how humans make you feel.
I don't like to think about humans being predators. It's jarring to equate you with,
Of the animal in the field. with eating rotting corpses?
Yes. The scientist was silent on the other end of the headset, and I caught some light scraping sounds. She must be taking notes from what I was telling her. I hoped I hadn't said too much. The humans wouldn't admit they were offended, even if they were.
You did great, Sonic. Thank you for sharing that with me. What I'm going to ask of you now is to try and put yourself in the predator's shoes.
She said.
Come up with as many reasons why an animal might choose to hunt as you can, beyond being cruel, violent, and unfeeling. We'll talk about it in tomorrow's session.
I focused my eyes on the floor.
Do we read tomorrow's session? I don't know, I skipped a couple
The flesh
episodes.
tasted so good that it was addictive. It was tough to think of a single other allure to predation, other than biological impulse. Even with humans, I assumed they had those aspects within them due to their brutal hunting methods. The difference was that I believed they had another side, and that there were enough positive attributes to outweigh the repugnant ones. Besides, they found a way to sate their cravings without harming other creatures. Maybe that's something I should ask Marcel. He might know the answers Sari is looking for. I breathed a weary sigh. I don't know if I can do that, but I'll try.
Good. Now, we're going to start your mission. The goal of this exercise is to stop any hostile ships from reaching orbital range of Earth. I'll be here for guidance as needed.
The screens glowed to life, and Tyler clenched his fist around the firing trigger. The image of Earth in the background was hyper-realistic, down to the orange glow dotting the continents. Swirling clouds idled across the oceans, and the inky backdrop framed the planet in serene radiance. It was a breathtaking sight, even in a simulation. I searched for enemy contacts on sensor data. Craning my neck, I tried to get a visual on a fast-approaching vessel from our left. The blinders were inhibiting my sight line, so it was difficult to ground myself. At least depending on the to the virtual explosions and conflicts taking place in the distance. My breath hitched in my throat as a plasma beam sailed meters from our hull. This felt too real and dangerous. The stress of decision-making was enough to make panic seep in. I was frozen as usual. What was I supposed to do? I couldn't even remember how to engage the targeting systems. Nonetheless, inaction was unacceptable. My trembling paw slugged the steering column and veered the ship toward the hostile. My diminished vision blurred. My heart was pounding so hard that it felt like an earthquake in my chest. Every instinct declared that facing an aggressive foe was too perilous. And I feel like I'm going to die. Like I'm flying into my doom. And it's not even real. Meanwhile, Tyler was impossibly collected as he aligned kinetic munitions with the target. How could humans push through the chemical fog with such ease? It was as though their instincts compelled them to run headlong toward danger rather than gallop to safety.
Sonic, deep breaths. Count to 5 as you inhale, then count to 5 as you exhale.
Sara's voice growled. I took a few wheezing breaths, attempting to comply with her orders. Through the lightheadedness, I could see the opposing craft enlarging in the viewport. A horrified gasp escaped before I could contain it. This was all happening so quickly. There was no time to think. Everything on screen froze, including the hostile that was just magnified. I slumped my shoulders in shame. The humans were going to can the experiment on day one. I was a hopeless cause. Helping them was never going to be within my capability, no matter how much I wanted it to be.
Talk to me.
The scientist's voice sounded urgent over the headset, which jolted me out of my daze.
Rate your fear on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the worst you've ever felt.
I blinked in confusion. 7?
We can work with that. Everything's going to be fine. This feeling will pass.
Sara said.
What thoughts went through your mind as you started to feel afraid?
I know I can't do this. I'm not a fighter, and I never will be. My instincts can't handle stress or danger.
What I'm hearing is that you don't feel that you can control your emotions. You've decided it's not possible already.
Humans are special. I have to face what I am.
What you are is a good pilot. Remember, the enemy is just as vulnerable as you.
It doesn't feel that way. It never does.
Focus on your target and get the shot off. Everything else doesn't matter. You can complete that one thing. One step at a time.
Squeezing my eyes shut, I allowed my breathing to fall back into a calm rhythm. It was within my power to press a few buttons, wasn't it? There had to be a way to override my instincts the way the humans kept their aggression in check. Marcel had squared off against 9 arcs of vessels in an amphibious ship, and we survived. This was nothing.
Hey, we can do this, Slanik. You're not alone here. Remember that.
Tyler growled. I flipped my ears in appreciation. The sandy-haired human didn't have much heart after learning Earth's insurmountable odds. but he was still trying to be supportive. Bravery felt a little less difficult, knowing that fearless predators had my back. Humans were survivors, and that meant I was in good company. You're not doing this by yourself. You're on the predator's side, and not the crocodile. They're the ones who should be afraid. I believed in humanity's strength, even if I was uncertain of my own. Newfound determination swelled in my veins as the simulation resumed. The blinders were there for the purpose of directing my attention to a single task. It was a matter of just acting and not thinking at all. The opposing ship barreled towards us, racing closer to Earth. My aviation knowledge kicked in, and I verified the target on sensors. All I contemplated was the intake of my breathing, while my claw jumped down on the missile switch. I dropped in on the sleek bomber, tracking its evasion attempts. My human partner sent a flood of kinetics close behind. It was prudent to take advantage of any disruption to shields. The missiles rocked the imaginary opponent, and Tyler's well-timed rounds tore through its armor. The seamless teamwork was invigorating for all.
What the fuck was that? I'll be right back. I did not find the source of my cat's sudden terrified outburst. Good.
The predator bared his teeth at the film, and I almost mimicked him. Instead of allowing the follow-up options to overwhelm me, I asked myself what the humans would do. They would go for the kill and not give the enemy any recovery time. Persistence hunting taught them how to be relentless. Maybe I could learn from their cruelty as well. Leave my friends alone, I hissed to the screen. It was easy to channel my outrage at the unprovoked assault on Earth. Nobody hurt my herd ever again. I navigated the ship nearer to our nemesis. My anger at the injustice was warring with the voice that told me to turn back. The resolute snarl on Tyler's face was enough to keep my paw on the accelerator. Just this once, I wanted to be the predator, to pounce on a weakened enemy. My heart was racing while I unloaded a devastating salvo into their flanks. Orange tendrils burst from its metallic shell and damned the fictitious crew to the vacuum. The simulation faded back to white with a mission success declaration.
You did it!
Tyler cheered, forcing a grin.
That was all you, Slanik.
I leapt up from the pilot's seat, wagging my tail. As the Federation often reminded us, they weren't supposed to have a fighting born in our bodies. How had he managed to kill an enemy? An IWA Terran intensity? Had the humans changed me? An answer to Sarah's earlier question popped into my mind. An animal might choose to be a predator because it refined their species into something stronger. Hunting mandated discipline and lessened the brunt of fearful instincts. Maybe it was empowering to be the one dealing the damage. Sarah cleared her throat.
I told you that you were a good pilot. That exercise should give you hope for what we can accomplish.
But it was only one ship, guys, I pointed out. That's nothing compared to the Crocodile invasion.
We're going to increase the duration and number of enemies every day. You'll be taking on an army in no time.
The exhilaration of success fizzled out as I processed that daunting prospect. The scientists sounded hell-bent on pushing me well past my instinct's limit when all was said and done. Every day was going to be more of a struggle than the next. If nothing else, though, their questioning had forced me to consider my fears in a new light.
Oh, buddy, I'm so proud of you.
Marcel must have snapped the microphone. His rumbling voice flooded into my ears.
You're going to turn those birds into space feathers. They'll never see it coming.
Thanks. But I don't know about that. He chuckled.
You're stronger than you think you are. The attacking skills are there, as we all saw. You nailed that fucker, even with Tyler button mashing and getting in your way.
This time, the tall co-pilot leaned close enough to hear the headset chatter. He threw up his hands in exasperation, then turned his glare at me for giggling. There was hilarity in the expression that once would have had me on the floor begging not to be eaten. I knew humans well enough to recognize the difference between jest and malice. Tyler waved a fist at the camera.
Slanik and I are going to win this war, while you're still on your ass eating Doritos.
Nah, are you kidding, bro? I'll be up there, stopping you from snacking on too many crayons mid-battle.
What can I say? That's a true predator's diet.
I appreciated that my friends were able to make light of a dark situation. That was their method of coping with the unpleasant. There wasn't a more resilient species in the galaxy. With their example to model, maybe it was possible to mold me into something a little more vicious. The survival of these alien predators was what was important, I reminded myself. My progression was a secondary objective that would complement the Terran's aims. If Earth was to be lost, the spiteful defenders would take as many enemies with them as possible. No battle waged against humans was ever as easy as it looked on paper. Regardless, I had faith the then Little Republic wouldn't hang our allies out to dry.
Memory transcription subject. Captain Carlson, Crocodile.
Ugh, I hate this guy.
Date. Standardized human time. October 8th, 2136. The Federation fleet entered warp in harmonious accord, and our voyage to Earth commenced on schedule. I was less than thrilled with the extraneous additions to my crew. Crocodile officers were preferred to the reserved exports of another species. Our diplomats stressed that this was an interplanetary effort and forced my talent. While I understood the necessity of building group cohesion, the first soul I implanted as operational first officer was already asking questions. His name was Thylon. To my understanding, he was a personal favorite of their High Elder. That didn't buy him any favor on my vessel. The Crocodile Alliance was the entity that planned this mission, down to the gritty details. My crew was chosen because of their special attributes, and I trust them. You never know who can keep their head in battle until you've been there. Thylon's speech was droopy ears. Why are the Terran colonies not on the bombing agenda? The data suggested humans had settlements on the Red World and their moon. There's research outposts in the gas giant moons, asteroid mining operations, orbital telescopes, and...
I get it. But Earth is the priority, I replied. Other than military installations, the rest can be cleaned up afterwards. The Farsal wiped the mucus from his nose.
The plans for a follow-up operation should be drawn up now. We have to stay prepared.
What is there to prepare for? The Predators can't muster a semblance of our numbers. I puffed my feathers out in a display of intimidation. You know, Thayon, I much prefer Jala as my XO. She doesn't pick everything.
You keep strange company, Calcim. There's something wrong with Jala. She seems... off.
There was a comment that had some basis to it, though I wasn't ready to take an outsider into my confidence. Jala was diagnosed with a rare cognitive disorder that entailed not producing the neurotransmitters for fear or affection. This caused a deficiency in empathy. Her responses to situations were often tasteless. Most Alliance officers wouldn't have allowed such individuals in their crew. However, the benefit of a person that didn't panic or lose focus couldn't be understated. As long as she didn't have to deal with the interpersonal side of things, Jala was the finest officer in my crew. I credited her as the reason we were the most effective ship in the Alliance Armada. That is Captain Calcim to you, I spat. Jala follows orders and makes the right calls. She's still my second even now, as far as I'm concerned.
Captain, I see we've got enough on the wrong paw.
Thayon's slender tail curled across the floor, twitching with restlessness.
I'd rather be in a Farsal vessel too, but this is where we are. Can we try to make the most of it?
I tossed my beak. Fine. But did you have to start tearing everything apart the second you came aboard?
I like to know who and what I'm working with. Every captain has a different background and a different way of running things. The more I know about you, the more useful I can be.
Then I'll keep it short and sweet. I started off as an extermination officer. I'm still one, really. Just with a starship and a title. Thayon's whiskers twitched as my former profession registered in his mind. There wasn't a better vocation to prepare a person for eliminating predators. It taught how to destroy a monster's habitat and prevent any chances of survival. The Predator's formation was disintegrating, and it looked likely we would secure victory within the hour. I considered broadcasting an apology to the surface once Earth's space fleet was exhausted. The unfortunate civilians knew they were witnessing the last day of their civilization. Did the humans not deserve the solace of an explanation? There was a part of me that wondered if we could have found another way. The issue was their growth and reproduction, which would be exponential if left unchecked. Maybe we could have isolated any humans who surrendered on an abandoned world, sterilizing them to prohibit breeding. That way, the existing primates could live out the rest of their lifespan without the option to prowl the stars. What if there was another path to achieve extinction without the deaths of billions? Calcim. Such thinking is counter. Hit her. I jabbed a talon at her, then pointed to the weapon station. You have no future. No place in society without me. So you're going to stay right here until the job is done. She hesitated, but was persuaded by my argument. The overhead power flickered out as the engine began to melt nearby systems. The emergency lighting colored the floorboards within view, and only essential functions were available. A plethora of enemies were still chasing our runaway ship. With our shield power rerouted away, there was no disincentive to use kinetics. Arcs of bullets plowed through our armor, and the Terran automaton chipped in its own lead munitions.
Requesting assistance in the medbay.
Zahn panted over the comms.
I am unable to carry Thayon on my own, nor am I able to fly the emergency medical pod. Captain? Anyone?
I sighed. I will be there in a minute. Hold on, Doctor. The Terran robot was recharging its weapons, but struggled to keep up with our unsafe speed. Fear burned through my veins. I offered a silent prayer that we would survive long enough to complete the mission. It was a few more seconds until we could deploy the antimatter bombs. The human contraption didn't target us from outside a reliable range. Arcs munitions were inflicting steady damage, but they hadn't caused any catastrophic explosions yet. We hobbled into orbital range and established target locks on 2 Terran cities. Jala slammed her beak on the firing mechanism. I gave her a nod, and we fled from the bridge with urgency. The journey was a blur as we swooped down the evacuation stairwell. Jala bolted through the door to the medbay, examining a piercing Zahn. The Takan doctor had thrown some supplies in his designated shuttle. I was surprised he hadn't just left Thion for dead. The unconscious Far Soul had a clump of bandages around his head. It was painful to see him comatose on a cot.
You took your time. Depraved soul. Against all odds, I found myself missing Carlos, and even Samantha. I kept busy by contemplating the Axe's interrogation and how to refute their absurd story. There had to be reconciliation between the Terrans and the Federation. It had required an unthinkable cost, but the Ghajiit government was swayed to the humans' corner. Unfortunately, Prime Minister Piri's death was confirmed by UN ground forces. Her final transmission could only achieve so much. I offered to bargain with the Federation for them, but then the humans abandoned me. But they're just gone, I mused aloud. If I strained on my hind legs, I could peer between out the window to the capital below. Then Lil Priam was a massive planet that dwarfed the likes of Earth and the Cradle. By comparison, it had a shorter orbit and slightly higher gravity than the average world. Interestingly, much of its landmass was inhospitable. Sunlight never touched half of its surface, leaving it too cold for plant and animal life. Its bright side had the opposite problem, too scorching hot to sustain water sources. There was only the thin space between extremes to build settlements. Then little scientists searched for new ways to push the frontiers, with various methods to cool their planet. They manipulated atmospheric reflectivity with aerosols, built an artificial upwelling system in their ocean, and used cloud seeding to generate rainfall. It took colossal effort to keep the gears in motion. Not all species are blessed with a perfect home. If it weren't for sentiment, then little colonies are much more conducive to habitation. The sight of human predators walking about became more frequent over the past few days. Many Venlil would give them a wide berth or cross to the other side of the street. I wondered why Earth was suddenly sending so many people abroad. Such a widespread presence was a lot to ask of their friends. A pointed cough came from the other side of the cell door.
Enjoying the view. Looks like you've had plenty of time to study the intricacies of Venlil society.
I whirled around to see Samantha with her auburn hair tied back in a knot. Her predatory eyes were unfocused, as though her mind was elsewhere. The anger in her voice bore a colder aspect than the last time I saw her. My instincts pronounced her demeanor as highly threatening. Was there something I had done to infuriate the humans? Or worse, were they becoming corrupted by the Arxa? Hello, Sam. I thought you guys had forgotten about me, I answered. She bared her pearly fangs, eyes dilating in a flash.
My friends call me Sam. You're not my friend.
Right. Sorry.
That you should be.
Footsteps sounded behind Samantha, and I breathed a sigh of relief as I recognized Carlos. For a moment, I thought the female had snuck in alone to assault me. Everything about her stance screamed that she was thirsty for blood. Maybe it was simply not seeing a human in days, but I felt there was some substance to my inference. There was a jingling sound as the male guard slid keys into the door. The spark was gone from his brown eyes, and his subdued mannerisms were uncharacteristic. The last time I saw Carlos, he was ribbing me and striking down my thoughts at every turn. There was no sign of playful mockery or admonishment now. My spines bristled in alarm. What happened to you both? Something is wrong. Carlos gave me a weary frown.
Earth was attacked by the Federation. Over 1 billion dead.
Don't pretend like you care. You got what you wanted, Soblin.
Samantha growled. Horror washed over me, and I sank back onto my bed. No wonder the humans were upset. I remembered what it felt like to watch the cradle burn, to grapple with the loss of my home and culture. Why did the Federation have to piss off the only species to defeat the Arxa? There was a time where I wanted to cripple the Predator's breeding grounds. That derogatory terminology still rang in my ears. When I turned myself in to UN custody, I was expecting to witness a brutal society. Instead, Earth amounted to decent people going about their daily existences. It was a structured planet, rich in life and culture. That's not what I want now. I nibbled at my claws with anxiety and tried to keep my expression submissive. I'm sorry for your loss. I know what it's like to be in your paws. Samantha clenched her fists.
Of course you do. You caused your world's death while trying to kill us. Just like the Krakata.
You're right. We brought it on ourselves, and I know that. We were horrible to humans. More so than any apology could ever excuse. Yet you showed mercy and compassion.
Fuck mercy. The rest of our fleet went home. But we get tethered to you, while Earth is under siege. How is that fair?
It's not, but I have no say in that. I can see you're hurting. If it makes you feel better to quarrel with me, then I encourage you to do so. Samantha turned her back in disgust. There was no way for me to offer amends that would satisfy her. All the same, my concern for her mental health was escalating. I knew how grief could swallow a person without a proper outlet. I cast an inquisitive stare toward Carlos, looking for direction. The Melgard's nostrils flared with pent-up frustration. Had the humans only visited to extol their anger on me? I'm glad you're both okay, I added, breaking the icy silence. I hope some of Earth was able to hold out. Carlos nodded.
We drove them off. With help.
Help? From the Venlil?
Sure. And other interested parties.
That is a vague descriptor. Who else would have come to rescue humanity? Carlos waved for me to follow him, and the absence of his snarl was striking. It was like the guards had received a personality transplant. Both seemed infused with hatred and impassivity, though one was directing it at me more than the other. I was frightened of what their predatory emotions could compel them to do. Dark thoughts raced through my mind as I tried to recall why I trusted these predators. Their heroism on the cattle ship seemed a distant memory. My eyes widened in alarm at consideration of the rescued. That reminded me of the Gajeeds on Earth, cared for outside a large metropolis. What happened to the Gajeed refugees? I blurted. I'm sorry if that's selfish, but I have to know. The male guard sighed.
The primary camp was brought to Venlo Prime when we started moving human evacuees. Most are safe.
That is positive news. How many humans did you evacuate from Earth?
Millions. We've known the Venlil all of 3 months. Some people prefer to ride it out in a bunker, or were banking on us to rout their forces.
Stop talking to that racist delusional prick like he's your pal.
Samantha spat.
Carlos, I thought we had this conversation.
The olive-skinned human crossed his arms.
I'm being civil. There's a difference.
Not wanting to sow more division between the duo, I kept my other questions to myself. That did explain why the humans' presence had increased rapidly. The cynical part of me wondered if the predator influx resulted in a spike in crime. The primates posed an extraordinary threat when they were angry, and they had to be more prone to deviant behavior than the Venlil. Carlos led the way past native wardens, and we stepped out into the capital's crisp air. The guard's stride seemed a bit strained from gravitational exertion. The difference on Vendel Prime wasn't enough to be significant, but the humans were tired quicker in physical activities. It was another reminder that they weren't home. A pair of Gajeeds were waiting by a spacecraft outside, joined by several UN personnel. My eyes widened as I realized why they were familiar. It was the deaf youth Talpin and his sister Berna. Both seemed to be in better spirits than the last time I saw them, and were carrying necessities. I can't believe I thought the humans were going to kill the kid first time I saw him. We all shared that thought.
Hello, Captain Sovlin.
A synthesized voice spoke the words in the Gajeed tongue, but with a bit of human growl. Talpin must have been given an AI program with Terran phonines installed.
Why are you being kept in a prison? You are a hero to us all.
The young Gajeed finished sliding his claws across a keyboard and fixed me with an expectant look. I didn't want to recount my crimes in detail. Then again, I wasn't sure how to begin translating my reply. At least Samantha seemed mollified by Talpin's presence. Perhaps it served as a reminder of her deaf brother. I deserved to be there. I made another person, a human, suffer, I muttered. Talpin turned his pupils to a nearby human and scanned the contortions of their fingers. His eyes widened. The adolescent struggled to believe that I could be involved with anything nefarious. His bass claws hovered over the keyboard for a moment before he typed out a reply.
Why?
Came the synthesized question.
Your deeds were spoken of in legend. You are a hero, a righteous man.
Never meet your
You saved
hero.
lives.
I lowered my gaze. I'm none of those things. I thought causing a predator pain would fix my problems. Erna appeared stunned as well.
You sound like you're talking about torture, Sovlin. That's vile. The humans are sweet, sensitive, generous.
I blinked in agreement, lowering my gaze. The predators beside Talpin projected fondness toward him, but I could see their jaws tightening as they listened to me. At least if Berna spread the word about Marcel, my people would squash the myth of my heroism. I deserve to have my legacy tarnished, and to be remembered for the sum of my crimes. Talpin tapped at his keyboard.
How could the humans treat you so kindly?
I don't know. Ask them, I answered. The human volunteer beside him thought for a moment before launching into an emphatic reply. The human translator seemed passionate about whatever she was conveying. The deaf Gajid looked impressed at what was passed on and nodded in acceptance. He shot me a disdainful look. I cast a nervous glance at Samantha. You speak sign language? What did she tell him? The guard flashed her teeth.
That you deserve to live with what you've done. That human discipline doesn't stoop to your level.
Well, that was a recurring sentiment when predators spoke to me. What I didn't understand was why the guards brought me to meet Talpin and Berna. It looked like the two Gajids were about to depart on a spaceship. After my disclosure, I doubted they'd want a send-off from me.
I don't want to trouble anywhere with him.
Talpin waved his claws emphatically at the predators.
Not if he tortured a human. He is a disgrace to our kind.
Berna curled her lip.
I second the notion. We both owe humanity our lives.
My confusion intensified, and I shot Carlos a questioning look. Talpin seemed to think I was accompanying them on a trip, but I didn't have an inkling what he was referring to. Where were the humans taking them? Was I actually involved?
Sovlin is the perfect person to pass on several messages for us. He can get you two through the door with those Colchian bastards.
The male guard tossed his shoulders in an uncommittal gesture.
He's also the one some Federation fuckwits might believe about the Gajid refugees and the war.
That was a good omen if the humans still wanted peace and dialogue. Maybe the attack on Earth hadn't completely pushed them to the Arcticide, as improbable as that seemed. These Terran predators had a merciful side, and I hoped we could appeal to that. It didn't sound like the entirety of the Federation was involved. The neutrals had minded their own business. There had to be some people that could convert to Terran advocacy. Other races...
Yes, I'm still working on cats.
Filled my chest. A messenger. I'd be happy to testify on your behalf and broker peace with your enemies. I know about remediation. Samantha scowled.
Peace is not an option anymore.
Peace is not an
Frankly,
option.
I declare war on all of the skeptics now. But we can't fight 300 species at once. At least, not yet. We're going to purge the 24 who attacked us, followed by the 14 others who voted for war.
What? That's the message, I gasped. Carlos shook his head.
No. I'll get to that in a minute. Firstly, we need someone who can look into several items for us.
Read this. We had it printed in your tongue. Extra special for you.
Female guard
Special
sneered.
just for you.
My shaking claws accepted the pamphlet, terrified at what the predators had inscribed. The paper nearly slipped from my grasp at once. Mournful tears pooled in my eyes. Roussel was dead. Killed by his own government for siding with humanity. I had mentored the Colchians since he was a child, and shepherded his development. His advice on the bridge, combined with his honor, was steadfast. I wanted him commanding my ship in my absence. It pained me that our last interactions were him viewing me as a monster. My vision burned, and I dabbed at the wetness with my fur. The humans wanted to uncover why the Colchians would resort to murder. It was unclear whether any future violence was planned against pro-human factions, but the predators weren't taking threats lightly. Not after Earth. The Terrans don't want species reaching out with false friendship. They want anyone who plots against them exposed, humiliated. Why would the scholarly Commonwealth be so opposed to humanity's diplomatic outreach? I was itching to demand Chief Nicornis' reasons for myself. He came across as a fair leader, reasonable to a fault. I would have considered him the kind who would give predators a fair shake.
Look into the Colchian matter for us, and find documentation of first contact with the Arxa. See what you can dig up.
Carlos growled. Samantha crossed her arms.
We need to know who's complicit in every scheme against us and our allies. Who is worth sparing? Who started this predator hatred, and why?
The male guard narrowed his eyes.
Our governments believe that you feel remorse, that you're not a flight risk. This is what we need from you, Sovlin.
Okay. And the message, I stammered. You implied there was a statement to deliver.
Oh, that's easy. Tell the Federation we're done contacting or negotiating with them. They never raised a finger to stop the attack on Earth. Let the neutrals know that they either reach out to condemn this terrorist act, or they can prepare for total war.
That message sent a chill through my blood. The other Gajeeds looked horrified as well. I needed to find a more tactful way of phrasing that flagrant threat if there was to be peace with any species. The humans could rack up a lot of collateral damage in seeking revenge for their Earth.
Memory transcription subject, UN Secretary General Elias Meyer. Date, standardized human time, October 18th, 2136. There was something uncivilized stirring in my soul as heartbreaking images flooded in from Earth. Seeing historic cities powdered into rubble and hearing tales of incalculable devastation was a gut-wrenching blow. It had been a mere 3 months since the first contact mission. In that span, 25 species had taken concrete actions to genocide human civilians without the slightest provocation. Grappling with my own actions, my own failure, weighed heavily upon me. I was responsible for mankind's future, and I hadn't used every option at our disposal. What if there was something else I could have done? Was I a coward for abandoning Earth, especially to bargain with the metaphorical devil? It would take years to rebuild our homeworld. 112 bombs had detonated on its surface, churning up contaminants and killing more than 1 billion. Reversing the atmospheric pollution would be a gruesome challenge, and we would witness more casualties in the aftermath. Strange how it wasn't humans who leveled our planet. I always thought it would be us who were our undoing.
Elias, we're docking at a luxury resort on Titan Station in 60 seconds.
Dr. Quemper, the current Secretary of Alien Affairs, tapped my shoulder.
Are you going to be up to this? You look unwell.
My first thought was always diplomacy in the past. Brutal warfare was something that I thought best relegated to our ancestors. It should feel monstrous for a pacifist leader to long to see our enemies' worlds desolated down to their cores. But now, I couldn't see myself restraining the generals. Their path seemed the only way. I craved the Federation's destruction as an organization. Regardless of the understanding that a small percentage were involved in the attack, their bigotry was incompatible with our survival. How many species had aided us? A mere 2, excluding the Arc's unexpected arrival. The Ceruleans were the only new race I cared to bargain with in the aftermath. The words of friendship other diplomats spoke proved to be empty. None of them backed us when it came down to it. The bystanders felt every bit as sinister as the Crocodile and their pals in this moment.
Your head has to be in this, Elias. No matter how impossible that is.
Quemper said gently.
We can't afford any mishaps when 10,000 Arx's ships are still in the Sol system.
I met her eyes. I never meant for them to come here. This wasn't what...
The Greys already knew where Earth was. You couldn't have known that. For what it's worth, they did save our asses.
Staving off my self-pity, my thoughts returned to the urgent matters at hand. The Arx had decimated the Crocodile strike force with an excess of arrivals. It was concerning that the reptiles had so many vessels in this sector. Chief Hunter Isif kept his fleet in orbit to protect us from secondary attacks. But I couldn't help but think they were scrutinizing us. The unpleasant reality was that the reptiles could plunder or conquer Earth now, if they wanted. We were vulnerable, and the heavy losses left military defenses sparse. The Dominion's philosophy was still reprehensible to me, a far cry from the UN's modicum of equality. However, at this point, we had to keep the Arx sated at all costs. So when Isif requested an audience with me by name, I chartered the first ship I could find off Venlo Prime. Governor Tarver, bless her heart, squeaked out an offer to join me, but I wasn't going to bless her in the line of fire. The Axa Hunter understood our inability to accommodate him on Earth. He agreed to wait in Titan's travel lodging for my arrival. I don't like rolling out the red carpet for someone who called the Venlil a delicacy and referred to Tarver as dinner. I'd like to punch him in the nose for saying that. Quemper, do you think that the Arxa are capable of society? Landing protocol. If, let's Let's say they had a stable non-sapient food source. The former SETI employee tilted her head.
I don't know. The Greys weren't always like this, but they altered their gene pool. I don't know if they still have art, or whether they indulge in empathy.
That is the mystery. By the way, can you set up a comms link with the Zerulean fleet in 15 minutes? We have some damage control on that front.
I'll do that after I hear that you're all right from your own lips. You need to hear yourself say it.
I am fine. Once these alien visitors are handled, it's time to bring every government together. Then, to rally the people behind our banner, and remind them not to give up. My shoes clicked on the decadent marble floor, and the crystal overhang reflected the colours of a rainbow from above. A glass viewport stretched the length of the lobby, complete with interactive holograms and exquisite telescopes. I observed a surreal view of Saturn as I passed the vacated concierge desk. This was considered the nicest hotel in space. For the sake of Earth survivors, I hoped the Arxer agreed. I felt awkward approaching the suite given to Isif. There was no question that the reptile could snap me in half with his jaws if he desired. Given the aggressivity the Arxer were prone to and how they detested weakness, this was gambling with my welfare. But with humanity's precarious position, someone had to pacify the baby killers. I rapped my knuckles against the door. Hello? My voice couldn't have sounded more uncertain, and I cursed my nerves. The door creaked open. A pair of split pupils surveyed me from the pitch-black interior. Isif didn't have any lights on, which added to my unease. He towered over me by at least 1.5 feet, showing teeth longer than my finger. The alien's tongue flitted.
Elias Meyer. 2 names, yes? We meet in person. Come in.
I clasped both hands behind my back and attempted to keep my strides even. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I noticed 3 other Arxer scattered about the living room. It was a safe assumption that they were advisors, servants, or military personnel. Perhaps it was a mistake to come alone, or even conveyed that I lacked support. Thanks for your military assistance, I croaked, pawing at my dry throat. I'm sorry. Do you have any water nearby? Isif tossed a water bottle at me, and I barely reacted in time to catch it. The liquid was lukewarm, but I chugged it with gratitude. The Greys seemed to be dissecting my every move, like a specimen under a microscope. There was never a plan for formal first contact with the Arxer. I wasn't sure where to begin. We were supposed to be using the Greys to get the Crocodile off our back. Now...
Would you like our assistance with rescue efforts? Human Command indicated that your ground residents may react poorly to us walking the streets.
Isif growled. I scratched my head in discomfort. I suggest asking each nation specifically. I'm sure someone would accept the offer, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you from us all. The people of Earth are in your debt, and the Arxer curled his lip.
Hey, relax. You've gone through a lot, human. Don't worry about offending us. I prefer honesty.
Right. Well, many people did not have a favorable view of your species prior to this, myself included. I don't imagine that will change overnight, especially with xenophobia abounding. Isif's eyes glittered in the darkness, narrowing to the point they were hardly open. His nostrils flared, and he seemed to mediate on a scent for a second. His grin intensified. I wondered if he could smell my nervousness. The chief hunter's holopad clicked to my belt.
We wish to access your system's internet.
The reptile continued in a polite rumble.
My scientists here requested documentation of your hunting and domestication specifically. It would also answer if your research is remotely professional.
I nodded. All right. Though we're quite different types of predators. I have no issue with sharing those search results. My holopad made its way into my hands, and I punched the keyword domestication into a search engine. An online encyclopedia article popped up as the top result, which should be sufficient. Unless I deemed it a necessity, I was going to try to conceal our persistence hunting ancestry. It might make the Arxer viewers as a serious threat due to our ability to weather a war.
Need a little WD-40 on these guys. There we go. Oh, I am failing at life. But that's nothing new.
For attrition, Isip snatched the device from my grip. The hunter must be quite eager to learn about us. I wasn't sure whether that was a positive sign or not. Perhaps the Dominion was assessing whether we shared their child-munching fervour. They could also be checking if we were on board with culling our weaker population. Had I just ticked them off by admitting our disdain for them?
Fascinating. So, humans did use animals for labor and livestock purposes, like us.
He murmured.
However, you keep pets too. Lesser beings coddled for entertainment and companionship in return for emotional benefits to their owners. This is a normal practice.
Yes.
This behavior is derived from a predator's social needs, I would presume. And you care for these pets like they are part of your tribe, I assume.
Usually, many humans struggle with living alone.
An opposite of how we tire of company in swift fashion. Your affinity for the Venville stems from this pet category, does it not?
It took a great effort to refrain from reflexive denial. I would never classify sapient beings, especially our friends, as animalistic playthings. But if the Arks could view the Venville as mere pets, that would be an upgrade to cattle consideration. It might make the reptiles willing to facilitate the release of the Venville captives. Remember, the Greys might require a predatory basis to accept our claims. Whatever concessions must be made to Stoll, to convince them we're on the same side, just do it. Yes, humans love adopting companion animals, I grumbled. Isif glared at his advisors.
Satisfied about the Venville? I told you that humans are just social predators, and those animals are a misapplication of their evolution.
An Arxer scientist coughed uneasily.
Humans are the first documented pack predator sapiens, sir. It was reasonable to ask why.
You're dismissed. Wander until you are summoned, so that Elias Meyer and I may talk in private. There are discussion matters that are above your clearance level.
The reptilian subordinates swished their tails and slunk off in obedience. Isif watched them depart, exhaling a hearty sigh. He pressed my holopad back into my hands and searched my gaze with his own. There was a certain trepidation in his dark orbs. He waited in silence for a full minute, clearly apprehensive of prying ears. I studied the alien's mannerisms with curiosity. Was the chief hunter expecting mutiny from his own ranks? How disciplined was Arxer command? Something told me his private divulgence would be enlightening as to what he expected from humanity. I'm sure you intend for Earth to repay your assistance with some form of compensation, I said. Isif bared his fangs.
Oh, you will, Elias Meyer, but not today. In the future.
I don't follow.
The fact is, you don't like that we keep the prey sapients as food. That is your entire issue with us. It violates your moral code. I'm not blind.
This commander could not realize we had backed the Federation with full-throated support. We didn't want the Dominion classing the UN as an enemy now. I tried to maintain my best poker face, though the Arxers seemed to see through my neutral expression. My silence must have confirmed his suspicions. But what could I say? I shrugged. We're different. Humans, well...
You haven't bred out your empathetic people. I thought you could help us attain an alternative food source.
Isif's voice was hardly more than a whisper, and he looked jumpy.
That is why I sent out our entire sector fleet to your aid. My species could have a better future someday, with your guidance, beyond war and cruelty.
What? A week ago, you gave me a speech about what a delicate Venville are. Called our beloved ally dinner, I hissed. The reptile sighed.
Tava had some spunk for press, naturally. Don't be unreasonable. I was recording that transmission in front of my crew, and also sending it home. I like my head attached to my body human.
My eyes widened. It wasn't a shock that the Arxer Dominion executed anyone who spoke out against their policies. However, it was encouraging news if some high-ranking officers didn't toe the party line. None of our captives saw any issue with the atrocities. They had boasted about how sophisticated their ideology was. Cattle ships could be stocked with the true believers. Not the best sample size, I suppose. So, you don't support your race's farming practices, I pressed. A growl rumbled in Isif's throat.
I prefer food that doesn't talk. This war has gone on long enough, and your allies have shown me that some of them could accept predators. If we're reduced to our animal instincts, we're no different than the Federation.
I concur on the instincts. Fine. I'll bite. Why are you telling me this?
So that you understand that I'm on your side, and you'll be more forthcoming with the future compensation. If you don't push your luck, I might be able to bargain for the release of more friends.
That was enough to pique my interest. Liberating any captive Ceruleans might make them a bit more forgiving of our Arxa saviors. Humanity had to reward the teddy bears for their fealty somehow. They sent aid without any history between our worlds. It also meant that Isif might follow through with the Venlil deal. I still clung to the hope that one day we could end all Serpian farms. No matter what the Federation had done to our two species, eating and torturing children wasn't the answer. Downplaying or excusing atrocities wasn't going to bring back London or Los Angeles. Mankind was better than that. I cracked my knuckles. How on earth are you going to sell mercy to your government?
Simple. Not phrasing it as treasonous mercy.
Isif chuckled.
Just stating it as reclaiming the farming glory of our ancestors. Talking about how simple prey breed quicker. I work within the powers that be.
Clever thinking. I'll do what I can to uphold our bargain. Though our production capacity is limited now.
Human, I'm understanding. Rational. Don't starve your people for this Venlil deal. What's important is that we're allies in the long run.
This Arxa wasn't a fellow creature that saw hunting as life's sole joy. There was an empathetic capability in his concern for human life, and that weariness of the war he was born into. He projected an aura of sincerity in contrast to their reputation. That was more than I saw in the Crocodile and their ilk. I wondered what this predator race would have been without outside interference. Thanks, Isith. If you are certain you can control your people, I'll find amenable places for you to direct your assistance, I whispered. Humor flashed in his eyes.
Anything for a friend. Though I presume you don't want me to share our food stash.
I hesitated. Actually, if you have extra herbivore feed, it might be edible to us. We're omnivores.
You are leaf flickers. Duly noted. I'll see what I can do.
This encounter went better than I anticipated, but unpleasantries were still ahead with the Cerulean call. Even if Isif had given us grounds to work with, a Federation and Arxa confrontation was a powder keg. I didn't want it going off in the Sol system. Humanity had to find a way to smooth the ruffled fur and keep two polar opposite species on our side. Memory transcription subject, UN Secretary General Elias Meyer. Date, Standardized Human Time, October 18th, 2136. After bidding farewell to the Arxa commander, I made my way to the conference hall. This hotel was once a primary site for technological conventions, expensive weddings, and even celebrity events. Now, while the catering and decor was missing, it was still a lavish enough venue to feel the call to the Ceruleans. My headquarters on Earth probably didn't exist anymore. The government needed a temporary base of operations. Secretary Quemper extended invitations to every world leader with the option to attend virtually. Many would be unable to procure space transportation, while others wouldn't want to leave during a crisis.
Sir, the Cerulean ambassador is waiting on a secure channel.
Quemper offered. I straightened my posture. Good. Patching through. The adorable face that appeared on screen was enough to soften my demeanor. Chaucer's brown fur looked fluffy as a cloud, and remained just as shaggy around his cub-like ears. The side-facing eyes made him look like an anxious teddy bear. I suspected that visage would fill most humans with the urge to scoop them up and hug them. The Cerulean narrowed his eyes. I stifled a giggle at how stern he was trying to look. The expression was almost comical. That would be an inappropriate reaction, given how they felt about the Arx's arrival. It would be preferable to keep these cute aliens as allies. This is Secretary General Meyer. Thank you for taking our call, and for your timely assistance, I offered.
I am sorry for what happened to Earth.
Chaucer poured at his nose, a forlorn twinkle in his eyes.
But my colleagues and I have some concerns. I believe you didn't invite the Arxa, but you haven't tried to push them away.
The consequences of aggravating the Greys would be severe and inadvisable with our current readiness. Candidly, we need the help. There isn't exactly an outpouring of aid from the galactic community. The Cerulean began licking his paw, which his species did when thinking. The absent-minded grooming was distracting. I couldn't stop my lips from curving up, despite knowing it was a hostile gesture to their brains. The cuteness was melting away even my practiced composure.
There is something amusing about not having aid for your planet, Mr. Meyer.
Jawson yipped. I shook my head quickly. No, not at all, Ambassador. My apologies.
Right. I've talked the Cerulean commanders into writing a more favorable report. We're going to do our best to neutralize the headlines, but I'd still expect incendiary accusations.
I understand. And thank you for trusting us. It wouldn't surprise me if certain media outlets ran with the Predator scheming together narrative. Having the Arxer in our court was the fuel Federation factions needed to turn on us. But I didn't care. Humanity was done crawling through mud to appease paranoid bigots. Species were either for us or against us, and they needed to decide which side pronto. In the long run, our Cerulean neighbors looked to be decent friends. I couldn't imagine their fleet's thought processes when the Arxer arrived. It would be understandable if they left at the sight of Greys and humans fighting side by side. The fact that the quadruped stayed meant it was worth justifying our position.
It's the least I could do.
1, 2, 3, 4,
We
5,
want to help
6,
with the
7,
rescue
8.
efforts. We have thousands
Oh wait,
of
1,
hospital
2,
ships
3,
in
4,
assisting
5,
in
6,
all
7.
Proxima
Really?
Centauri. That's where I am now. Our military may be unimpressive, but our doctors are second to none.
Medical assistance would be appreciated, Ambassador. Please, send them at your earliest convenience. My voice took on a pleading lilt, contemplating Earth's desperation. If there's any information you need about human biology...
The Venville data has given us a baseline, but the issue is sending unarmed civilians into an Arxer occupation. I want to help you, but how do I authorize that order?
You want me to get rid of the Greys first?
Yes, for our safety.
Jawson, with respect, they haven't attacked a single one of your ships so far.
I'm sure that the monsters who snack on our cubs have benevolent intentions toward the Cerulean race. I should invite them over for dinner.
That's not what I meant. Human lives are...
What about our lives? These are good, selfless people.
With emergency services down in most metropolitan areas, there was nobody to respond to medical calls. Anyone who suffered a heart attack or sustained serious injuries was on their own. I would prefer Cerulean medics tending to our people rather than famished Arxer. That said, ISIF's forces were the only protection Earth had right now. We needed both of their offerings. As I said, I am willing to aggravate the Arxer now, I replied. But I'm confident this commander will not attack your doctors. Jawson bared his tiny teeth.
You can't be confident enough. The Arxer are not trustworthy. They're sapient-eating fiends.
I know. But there are good people on Earth that need your help, and I believe the Greys will stand down if asked. Please, trust my judgment this one time.
Oh, damn it, human. I'll send the medical ships. But if anything happens to them, this is the last Cerulean aid you're getting. We're not expendable.
I inwardly cursed this gamble. But thank you. Kremper, please contact the Chief Hunter. Let him know the inbound fleet are rescue workers and are not to be harmed. The Secretary of Alien Affairs departed with haste. The Cerulean scientist began facing in a nervous daze as he sent a transmission to him. Humanity would remember the quadruped's heroism for generations. I didn't know how we could thank them enough. A close-knit alliance might form out of this tragedy. What am I going to do about the other friendly diplomats? They showed just how much they care for predator lives. A bipedal sapient popped up in front of the camera as though my thoughts found him. His coarse pelt was the tone of a red fox, and his face had some white markings. I racked my brain, identifying him as a Yorto. It was all I could do not to launch into a tirade against his inaction. What was Ambassador Laulo doing with Jawson?
I'm sorry about Earth too.
The person barked.
Humans have been the only ones that treated us as equals, rather than a charity case.
I narrowed my eyes and forced myself to maintain...
I don't need another new brush.
The Civilians didn't mention we had company. What can I do for you?
I just want you to know we do care about what happened to humanity. Stars, I feel stupid saying this out loud. I really wish we could have helped like Jawson.
Those words are easy to say, aren't they? Why didn't the Yortul raise a claw? The Zerulean ambassador watched in silence, flicking his ears in discomfort. I urged myself to rein in my fury for his sake. This wasn't a discussion to have in front of our newest allies. Holding the bystanders accountable could alienate our neighbors. Laulo averted his gaze.
We don't have our own fleet yet to send you, so, I guess we're useless to you. We're the newest uplifts. Guess you think we're worthless primitives now too.
I mulled over his explanation in silence. That did alter my perspective if the Yortul hadn't developed any military assets to mobilize. It didn't sound like the Federation had done anything more than dump technology in their lap and expect them to figure it out. Perhaps the apologetic sentiment was worth something.
Anyhow, I scrounged up millions of volunteers to help you rebuild.
The uplift grumbled.
We have lots of untapped resources, and it's labor if you want it. We'd need external transport to get to Earth. I'm sorry that my offer is so underwhelming.
I raised my hands in reassurance. We would love any help you're willing to extend. It doesn't have to come in a military form, Laulo. Maybe we can teach you a thing or two about our engineering.
Really? You would do that?
Of course. We're still new to Federation technology ourselves. The two of us can figure out their secrets together. The Yortul's expression was the image of relief as he squeezed his eyes shut. I felt sorry for the poor guy if he was expecting to be rebuked for technological deficiencies. Perhaps this exchange was reason enough for me to move the goalposts. Anyone who offered assistance would be in my good graces, whether it was military or not. Some of our allies might have been too scared to fight, which could be fixed. They might have been too far away, or didn't have spare military resources. Chawson gave the uplift a friendly nudge.
You can ask us for help too. I knew I was right to bring you along.
I apologize if I snapped at you, Laulo. It's been a difficult 48 hours, I muttered. Have you guys heard anything from the other human allied races? The Zerulean sighed.
No, I'm afraid not.
I pursed my lips. If no additional species expressed the slightest concern for our predicament, that lessened the possibility of extenuating circumstances.
Hey, baby.
According to my sources, the Maziks and the Sifkids hadn't been partial to us. Maybe the absent races had blamed us for killing their diplomats because of our predatory compulsions. Should I even bother reaching out to any of them? My throat felt dry. Well, I appreciate...
Start some shadows.
Please, keep in touch if you have any concerns. Chawson waved a paw.
Wait, Maya. I know now may not be the right time, but there was an idea I'd like to mention at least.
Go on.
The Zeruleans and the Yortul are both interested in the human exposure program.
Laulo chimed in.
Like you did with the Ven Lil at first contact.
Chawson flicked his ears.
Obviously, some civilians are going to be sharply exposed with rescue efforts, but I still think it's important to foster understanding and discussion in a controlled environment.
We'd be amenable to that idea, though any human candidates will carry emotional baggage after this attack. I'll see what I can do to set that up.
Excellent. Take care, Maya, and let me know our hospital fleet status regularly.
The Zerulean terminated the call, and I flopped down on a chair with exhaustion. Human participation in an exchange program shouldn't be an issue, given how cute our helpers were. A few friends in the galaxy was a silver lining. The future ahead of us was going to be rife with war and suffering. We needed to maintain some positive relations to stay sane. I fished out my holopad and contemplated the address I was live streaming tonight. My original speech was mired with blame and bitterness, focused on revenge. There was room for such sentiment, but that was also how the Archer ended up with such a warped ideology. What humanity needed was hope. The first words spilled from my fingers in a burst of inspiration. To the people of planet Earth who have been preyed upon by an unreasonable enemy, I know you are grieving the innocent blood that has been spilled this week. You feel hurt and anger for the loved ones taken away too soon. I share each scrap of your pain. What I want you to know is that humanity will endure, and that we are not alone. Not only do we have each other, but we have friends who stand with us. The Zeruleans and the Ven Lil fought with us, and gave us back a sliver of optimism for a better life among the stars. It is time to unite with everyone who believes in our ideals, to stand as a single species with a single purpose. Together, we will go for the Federation's throat, relentless in the face of injustice, We will bring our enemies and our persecutors to their knees if it takes millennia to rectify this vendetta. Humanity calls for atonement, for our right to exist. When we are done, the galaxy shall know what a hunter is. My lips curved up with malice. The speech required some tweaking, but it carried the suitable degree of vengefulness. Governor Tarver would be relieved that I tempered the prior message down a notch. If humanity could unify for the purpose of destruction, then the Federation would have a genuine reason to fear us. There would be a reckoning for Earth, and I didn't know that their organization would survive it.
Transcription subject, Captain Calcin, Crocodile Alliance Command. Date, Standardized Human Time, October 18th, 2136. Darkness had fallen over the reserve when I peeked out from the tent. Sleep had instilled new energy in my veins. There was a slim hope of escaping Earth if we could keep away from human search parties. Our posse needed to figure out our next move, and how to transport the Predator kid without harming it. A muffled whine echoed from behind me. I twisted around to see Argent bound in tight rope from head to toe. It must have woken before me and been struggling to break free. Several layers of tape had been slapped over its mouth, wasting medical gauze. I assumed Zahn didn't want to hear a human speak. Swallowing my nerves, I approached it. Shh, it's okay. I'm going to have to rip the tape off. Close your eyes. How could Dr. Zahn treat it like a thoughtless animal? Predators or not, humans were feeling sapience. The level of bindings was both excessive and unnecessary. Something as simple as tying a bell around its leg would suffice. It didn't seem fast or stealthy. The predator child squeezed its eyes shut. I yanked the adhesive off as quickly as I could and winced at the grimace on its features. The skin by its lip carried a red patch behind. The creature refrained from biting me with its slobbery canines, which was a relief. I set to work untangling the series of knots. What happened if Arjun tried to take me by surprise once it was loose? It could go for my gun before I knew what hit me. I was within grappling distance, and its reflexes must be quicker than mine. The last of the rope came untangled, and the human wriggled out of its entrapments. My gaze drifted to my sidearm. I took a few steps back, and barely resisted the urge to draw a weapon. The kid had faced enough hardship in these past few days. It needed someone to be civilized to it. The watery look in its eyes. The poor thing is terrified. There's no question these wretches have feelings. I'm sorry that they did that to you, Arjun. Are you okay? I asked gently. It sniffled.
The only reason you're not killing me is because you think they'll trade resources for me. I heard how you talked about me.
That stopped Zahn and Jala from shooting you, didn't it? I would have let you go. Trust me, I want to get you back to your family safely.
That's bullshit! Those two aliens are evil! If you want me released, then help me get out of here!
I was beginning to regret taking the tape off this thing's mouth. That combative shouting wasn't helping anyone. It needed to keep its voice down, or Zahn would realize I was trying to console a human. However, expecting an aggressive predator to keep its head was a bit overambitious. Holding this child to crocodile sensibility standards would be unfair. I need the doctor cooperating. My feathers puffed out with irritation. My friend with the bandages will die without him. He's a good person. Smart. Witty. The predator bared his teeth.
None of you are good people. You killed millions indiscriminately, and you liked it.
You don't know what you're talking about. I had to choose between hundreds of civilizations and yours. It was a terrible decision, but a necessity for the continuance of life. Every step of the way I tried to minimize human suffering.
By dropping bombs on cities? Did you hear yourself?
To the very last moment we approached Earth, I was trying to think of another way. My own crew hates that I treat your kind with dignity, and that I offer predators surrender.
Then your crew are assholes!
Arjun's voice sounded hoarse, and its lips looked dry. How had Zahn expected it to drink water with its mouth taped shut? The Takan doctor hadn't even left rations nearby. It probably would make that hateful expert giddy if it died of dehydration. I fished through my own rations, making sure never to turn my back on the human. It would be foolish to leave myself vulnerable to pouncing or strangulation. The child watched with interest as I procured a canteen.
Damn it.
It gulped down a bit more than I'd like, before handing the canister back. Jala is the other crocodile you saw. Her brain doesn't feel empathy or fear, I said. She can't help that she's vicious, any more than you can. In fact, Arjun is more capable of compassion. It has tried to appeal to my morality several times. It cares for more than its own life. The beast scowled.
Humans are not vicious. You're brainwashed, Kalsim. We have lives, families, schools, jokes, songs and games, just like you.
I'm sorry for all the beauty you've lost, but that doesn't change the truth. Tell me that you can't see humans killing or enslaving weaker cultures, that you wouldn't happily take our worlds away and reduce us to playthings.
What? That's not our plan. We would never do that.
Yet you've done these things to your own kind, and we're alien, not human. You'll build your empire off our backs one way or another. It's in your DNA, passed from your ancestors to little ones like you. That, your growth, is the threat. Arjun clenched its fists in indignation, but was distracted by its stomach growling. Racking my brain, I tried to recall what Noah shared about human needs. The speaker claimed that their diet was primarily vegetation, and that they could live without meat. That meant this adolescent could consume our food without issue. My talons retrieved a slab of dried tree bark. Here, stop arguing with me and eat this.
That doesn't look like my food.
Arjun eyed the offering suspiciously. It took a hesitant nibble, then spit the bite out.
That is bitter. Gross.
I'm giving you my rations so you don't starve. It doesn't have to taste like your delectable blood-filled cuisine. The kid made a disgusted face, but swallowed several bites. The gagging sound it made seemed rather dramatic. You'd think it was expelling its lungs, or that he had fed it a corrosive poison. This ruckus was going to ensure Zahn had checked.
Stop it.
Few Krokotl would have gone out of their way to ensure a predator's welfare. Arjun didn't understand why its planet was attacked, but I didn't blame it for that. It was emotionally distressed and unable to see these matters with objectivity. Maybe the youth would come to know that I protected it in time. The Takan doctor sauntered in, wielding a pistol.
Good grief, Kalsim. You've let it loose. And you're feeding it.
Tree bark. We don't want it to lose its mind and gorge on Thion's corpse, I said. Speaking of which, where is the first officer?
Don't change the fucking subject. So now instead of being bartered for supplies, this human is using up precious resources and manpower.
It's a temporary loss. We don't want to offer up the kid as a walking skeleton.
Why the hell not? If you keep its stomach empty, the humans will be under more of a time constraint to get it back. That's assuming predators care at all.
Arjun shoved the last of the bark in its mouth, inching away from Zahn. Its cheeks were tear-stained, but absolute hatred shone in its pupils as well. I couldn't imagine how overwhelming the predatory chemicals flowing through its veins were. The doctor's lack of compassion was staggering. With how cold his suggestion of starvation was, you would think he had Jarla's disorder. I fixed the Takan with a glare. First off, we would encourage the humans to treat us the same in kind. This predator doesn't deserve to suffer for existing. It has suffered enough pain and heartache today. The physician swished his tail.
You're oh so worried about its feigned emotions. Why do you care what it feels?
Fuck you! I'm not an it!
The human growled. Zahn charged the kid, rearing back with his firearm. The doctor trembled with anger as he swung the gun toward its head. The predator's binocular gaze widened in alarm. I couldn't let it be beaten to a pulp for speaking its mind, when all it had done was complain about our language. Arjun had a family and a future out there, which was jeopardized by the Takan's malice. The more I considered our conversation, its intelligence was impressive for a child. Granted, it would help propagate the survival of the human race, but that seemed a likely probability no matter what. So what did harming it achieve? I don't want to see it in pain. Or worse, end up like Thion. Without realizing I had moved, I stretched my wing in the strike's path. Zahn was committed to the blow by the time I obstructed his angle. The metal gun connected with my soft tissue, while the human cowered behind a feathery shield. Pain flared down my left appendage, resonating to the bone. The throbbing sensation was nauseating, and a single glance told me it was broken. "Shit! You broke my wing!" I screeched, doubling over in anguish. "What if that had been Arjun's head? You could have cracked his skull!" The doctor leveled his gun barrel at me.
His?
My eyes widened as I realized the slip of my tongue. I shook my head, trying to filter away any positive assessments of Arjun. The kid was lying prone on the floor, and its eyes were bulging. If their chills and pack were taken away, humans weren't competent predators. I was the only one that could protect this beast. Zan's concentration waned as a squawking Jala landed behind him. I took the opportunity to wrench the gun from his grip with my good wing. Ironically, I could use his services to patch the broken bone up. The pain intensified with the slightest movements or vibrations. The Takan hadn't even flinched at assaulting me. I brandished the firearm awkwardly. Mutiny is punishable by death, unless the captain is deemed unfit for command. Why shouldn't I carry out your sentence?
Calcium, put the gun down.
The doctor stammered.
You're being unreasonable.
I am unreasonable. Then what Nishtal do I call you? Jala issued a hearty laugh.
What did I miss?
The female crocodile's eyes darted behind him, and she drew her own firearm. Arjun had capitalized on the chaos, making a break for the exit. The human skidded to a halt once the armed sociopath blocked its path. After witnessing how slippery Terran forces were, I really should have been paying more attention to it. I hope Jala doesn't make any hasty decisions here. Zan proved himself a threat to crew safety and this mission. I lowered the pistol and noted the contempt in the doctor's eyes. But he's not going to disobey orders again, is he? The Takan sighed.
No, sir.
Your wing isn't supposed to bend like that, Calcium.
Jala chuckled. I struggled to ignore the searing pain. Tell me something I don't know. Go on. Laugh at my misfortune later. Is there something you need?
I circled the perimeter from the skies and spotted a human a few clicks away. It's heading toward our position. And it's armed.
Arjun mustered a feral snarl.
Dad,
Panic swelled in my chest at the thought of Terrans converging on our position. Confronting Arjun's father was an option, but we didn't know that it was alone. The photographer might notice that something was wrong and alert authorities. Humans were dangerous without the element of surprise. It was unclear whether our small posse could survive direct combat. It would be in our best interest to leave the kid, and that was what my conscience demanded. However, that plan wouldn't be popular with my companions. With a crippled wing, taking on Jala and Zan was an incredible risk. Both could aim guns without difficulty, and a flight-worthy crocodile could maneuver freely. More importantly, the doctor's incapacitation would damn Thyone. That was the main reason I couldn't punish this mutiny. The Farsol's life took precedence over Arjun's welfare, plain and simple. I had to keep this together until Thyone regained consciousness. It's time to move, I decided. Where's your patient, Zan? The doctor scowled.
Thyone is safe. Jala crafted a pulley system and put him up in a nearby tree. Predators won't get to him there, and though I can't speak for humans finding him.
Good. We need to hurry before dozens of full-grown beasts descend on us. We'll come back as soon as human activity cools off. Jala began collecting our supplies, as well as anything Arjun had that was useful. I steered the kid out into the open, trying to be gentle with my gun prodding. Intimidating it wasn't my desire, but we needed to move quickly. There was no time for a diplomatic approach. Arjun looked around in desperation as we staggered out of the encampment. I knew it wanted to be rescued. That pleading gaze reminded me of the burning pups, praying to be saved from their extermination. Why did it have to jog up those memories with every expression? I thought I was past that guilt.
Dad! Help!
The kid screamed.
Dad!
I clapped my good wing over its mouth. You idiot! Are you trying to get yourself killed? Zan passed me a roll of medical gauze, a conceited glint in his eyes. I could hear the words, "Told you so," from the smug doctor. He scowled at the human, tracing a toe over his own throat slowly. The child swallowed, and I suppose it understood the gesture. I applied a single layer of tape and offered a sympathetic pat. The predator hadn't left much choice other than to gag it. Not only could that wailing cry have alerted its father, but it could have drawn attention from forest beasts. That squashed all hopes of Arjun's guardian accepting the disappearance as a tragic accident. Its suspicions were going to be elevated, and its protective instincts would seek answers. Our entourage was going to find out exactly how good humans were at tracking. Memory transcription subject. Captain Calcium, Crocodile Alliance Command. Date, standardized human time, October 18th, 21:36. The leafy ground crunched underfoot as we steered the Terran prisoner across the park. I was certain Arjun was purposely stomping on brittle patches. The kid wanted to make as much noise as possible in an attempt to summon others of its kind. It didn't matter how much of a ruckus it made, or if it dragged its feet. With how slow humans plodded along, we had at least an hour of walking between us and the returning father. It would tire after sustained exertion and be forced to retrieve a vehicle to close that distance. That left time to snack and hydrate. I ambled along on wavy legs. How do you land animals walk everywhere? I wish I could still fly, Zan.
And I wish I could exsanguinate that thing of yours. It would die in minutes if I sliced that big artery on its neck,
the doctor muttered. Jarla chuckled.
Do you think its eyes would stay open after we axed its head? Or maybe they would pop right out of its skull?
We're not killing it, I snapped. Life, even tainted life, is sacred. True exterminators do not kill for fun or for laughs. Zan pulled a scalpel from his bag and inspected the reflective metal. The Tucken must be considering how it would slice through predator skin. I wondered why he hated humans when his species government voted to be their allies. What left him so certain that social hunters had no emotions or benefits? I tried to focus on our travels, knowing we couldn't rest before Arjun's father did. The kid's skin was damp, but the strain to its breathing was minimal. We had been walking in the afternoon heat for an hour, and its legs weren't fully grown. It should be panting and stumbling with exhaustion. What regiment has this human hatchling been through? Its little lungs must be on fire. We need to rest, for its sake, soon. Additionally, there had been a surprising lack of predator sightings in the forest environment. Something must have picked up on our scent by now, but none of them had investigated further. Did other hunters fear the apex humans? The primates shouldn't scare wild beasts with their unimpressive forms. Arjun jerked backward and howled against the tape. I cursed as the kid clipped my broken wing. Did I tell you to stop walking? We'll rest in a few minutes. You're almost there. It continued screaming beneath the gag, and its binocular eyes were almost hysterical. If something frightened a predator, that gave me pause. There must be a reason it refused to walk. Unless this was a time-wasting trick. The Thea looked strikingly real, though, so I was inclined to believe the antics. A blood-curdling hiss permeated the air, and movement flashed across the leafy ground. A brown creature uncoiled its scaly body, lifting its head toward us. A forked tongue waggled from its mouth like a seesaw. The way it slithered forward was alien and unnerving. There were no legs that I could see. That's a prey animal. It has side-facing eyes, I decided. The poor thing must be trying to scare off the predator, flattening its neck like that. I can't believe that works on a sapient human. The alarming Arjun's hairs intensified, and beads of sweat surfaced on its skin. We would have stepped on the reptile if the kid hadn't flailed about. Why was it so terrified of a crippled animal? The tiger's bite was much more petrifying than this thing. The human seemed to forget about the gun to its back and bolted away with impossible energy. That mad dash reminded me of Federation species in a mindless stampede. Maybe these frail primates incorporated some prey instincts into their hardware to compensate for their weakness. Jarla lined up her gun barrel.
Better learn how to fly real quick, Arjun.
My eyes widened. Don't shoot it!
You're no fun. I'm not just letting that scrawny beast go.
The sociopath was airborne before I could stop her and bore down on Arjun with powerful flaps. She swiped her talons across its shoulder, carving twin gashes into its flesh. The human yelped, lost its balance from the blow, and toppled to the ground. Jarla's takeoff aggravated the hissing animal, which hadn't blinked a single time. Shouldn't it calm down now that the predator was gone? Zan seemed to feel bad for it, since the sight of Arjun had traumatized it. He wanted to show it we weren't like the humans. The doctor reached out to give it a comforting pat.
Nobody's going to hurt you, sweetie. Did those nasty apes eat your babies?
The panicked animal was still in fending off predator's mode. It was worked up in a frenzy, desperate and aggressive to any movement. Zan was oblivious to the opening of its mouth. It bit the doctor with tiny teeth, and he grabbed his arm in pain. My gun was readied within a second, and I dispatched a shot through its head. I cursed the Tekken for making me shoot a non-sapient victim to Terran incursions. To make matters worse, any nearby humans would hear that reverberation. You had to try to touch a terrified, helpless prey animal, I sighed. Zahn inspected the 2 tiny puncture marks.
I just wanted to soothe it, Calcium. Let me disinfect the wound. Barely a scratch.
My pupil swiveled toward Arjun, who had ripped the tape off its own mouth. Charla was leaning over it and pecked at its earlobe to draw a reaction. I rushed over to intervene, pushing the female crocodile away from the downed kid. My curiosity demanded an explanation for the freak-out. That was irresponsible of you to run off. You startled that poor animal, I grumbled. All that panic for a rudimentary threat display. Arjun gawked at the marks on Zahn's grey skin.
The snake beat you. Listen, Calcium. If you don't get into a human medic, he's going to die. Painfully.
Die? I'm not falling for that.
The doctor scoffed.
Our species actually knows how to treat infections.
We have penicillin too, Dr. Psycho. Do you have no concept of venom? You're going to be paralyzed and unable to breathe in an hour.
It does burn quite a bit, Captain, but I have painkillers. Besides, if I was actually poisoned, it's human to die and languish. That's all they're capable of wanting.
My eyes narrowed as Zahn confessed to localized pain. His arm did look rather swollen near the puncture wounds. Then again, a medical professional should recognize the signs of blood poisoning. I hoped he wouldn't brush off Arjun's warning just because a human passed it along. We do need to keep moving urgently. I'll monitor Zahn's symptoms, and if it gets worse, I'll figure something out. Let's get in a few more minutes of walking, and we'll settle down, I said. We can disinfect your wound, and Arjun's incisions. The predator kid flexed its shoulder with a wince. The crimson blood staining its artificial pelt was drying. It pursed its lips like it wanted to argue, but I waved it along at gunpoint. The human shuffled ahead in silence, not wanting the tape reapplied. The tree cover thinned out, and we pressed ahead for several monotonous minutes. I remained on the lookout for snakes, just in case. It didn't make sense why Arjun would help its tormentor. Also, if snakes were really that dangerous and frightening, why hadn't humans exterminated them? Zahn sucked in a sharp breath, facial muscles contorting. His pace had begun to lag several steps behind ours. He touched the affected area with the other paw and screamed in a high register. Tears trickled from his eyes.
My blood is on fire!
He squealed. The tacken slumped against the base of a tree, writhing in agony. Arjun's eyebrows twitched, as though it was in pain itself. Perhaps I had underestimated the scope of human empathy. The best we could hope for after this failed mission was that their murders were less sadistic than Axa Hunt's.
Make it stop!
Zahn shrieked. Charla puffed out her feathers.
Shut up. You're giving away our location.
It hurts so bad. Help me. It's like acid. It's...
The female crocodile retrieved the medical tape, and I slapped it out of her grip with the good wing. She wasn't going to shut Zahn up like an animal while he was in anguish. Losing the doctor was unacceptable. His services were needed for a fine officer's survival. Arjun knelt on its knee and coaxed the tacken into a prone position. I knew Zahn was out of it when he didn't resist the beast's contact. The predator was remarkably gentle with its motions. It showed decency to an enemy that did not deserve it, just like my officer said I had where humans were involved. I treated their kind with respect, that I didn't make them suffer and I didn't enjoy their deaths.
Calcium, we need to get help.
Arjun pleaded. The doctor's grip tightened around a grass clump.
Get lost, Predator. You just want to watch my suffering up close. You're lapping it up.
I don't want to watch anyone die. You're the one who wanted to watch humans suffer up close.
No. Wounded prey smells good. Right. Wait to get your pickings until I'm dead.
We never wanted to eat you. I'm a vegetarian. It's part of my religion. To show compassion for animals.
My eyes widened at its proclamation. The predator had to be joking. It was Federation religions that dictated that preying on animals was greedy, bloodthirsty, and evil. Natural-born hunters would never follow any ideology that demonized their own existence. How did that make the slightest sense?
I thought humans were interesting,
Charla clicked.
but they're pathetic, just like everyone else. Cowering in the face of danger. Religion's about compassion. Crying over people that are dead like it's so sad.
I glared at her. As I've told you from the beginning, humans have selective empathy. Our knowledge of them is evolving, but their expansionism is incompatible with peace.
Don't be fooled, Jowler. They're brutal, cunning, and manipulative.
Zan gasped.
Their history is one of conquest and invasions. Humans cook up new ways to kill each other. Always.
The doctor howled through gritted teeth as a spasm rippled down the affected limb. His pained cry morphed into a full-throated scream. Arjun wordlessly poured some water on the Takan's head, trying to cool his burning skin. Somehow, I trusted the predator not to finish him off. My attention shifted to finding an effective painkiller. Before I realized what was happening, a deafening gunshot echoed behind me. Jala was hovering over Zan, a crazed look in her eyes. The physician's body went slack as blood gushed from his temple. The human gaped as the corpse brushed its leg. I aimed my sidearm at the sociopath. "What did you do? Drop your weapon!"
And that's precisely how to shut someone up.
She chirped.
Enough of your games, Calcim. We do this my way now.
"Drop the gun!"
Come on. You hated Zan. He was making too much noise. The predator said he was going to die anyway. Plus, you would have had to stay here and listen to him scream.
"This is your last warning."
The human is slowing us down too, and it will actively work against us at every turn. I'm doing you a favor. Make your choice. Me or Arjun.
Jala swiveled her pistol toward the predator kid, who seemed stunned by Zan's death. Arjun had never seen a creature die in front of it, had it? The words it said about compassion for animals reminded me of my extermination philosophy. We both killed when it was necessary and contained our damage to the rightful sources. Against all odds, I appreciated this predator's way of life. It was honorable and empathetic enough, not yet lost to its destructive instincts. I had more in common with this prowler than Jala. There was some attachment to it, to him, that I didn't want to watch him die in front of me. I squeezed the trigger, and a succinct pop indicated a successful shot. Shock flashed in the sociopath's eyes before her body crashed alongside Zan's. The gun slipped from my grasp in a daze. Had I really just lost both able-bodied crew in the span of a minute? Arjun scrambled to his feet, skiving up the weapon. He didn't point it at me for some reason. Blue Takan blood was splattered alongside his own scarlet shade. The little predator flopped down beside the doctor's satchel. "You're hurt. We need to treat your wounds and find your father," I stammered. The human didn't respond and merely got to work patching up his own injuries. My instincts should have created an uproar over my proximity to an armed predator. However, I couldn't process fear through the shock. This world of death and wilderness, Earth, could not be my reality. I zoned out, staring into the distance. My story would come full circle if it was ended by the predator I chose to spare. Quite a poetic conclusion. For turning my back on my occupation, the 3 Federation castaways could lie unburied in this infested land for all eternity. Fion is unconscious and abandoned in this predatory hell. Snap out of it, Calcim. There was a slight cracking sound from above, which broke my trance. Before I could glance up, something rough brushed against my throat. The next thing I knew, rope cinched around my throat in a suffocating knot. My body was yanked upward, and I found myself standing on empty space. I instinctively tried to loosen the noose as my entire mass dangled in its secure embrace. My wings attempted to tread air. Searing, all-encompassing pain lanced down the broken bone. Generating lift was impossible.
Son,
A thunderous voice barked from above.
get out of here and call for help. Marcos is looking for these fuckers.
How had Arjun's father gotten here so soon? There was no way a human predator could have closed the distance without running. But running that long was impossible, unless their endurance was nigh divine. The kid hadn't tied at all either. Oh, sweet Inatalda. Arjun palmed his black hair.
Tell me you regret what your species did, Calcim. Please.
Regret? Sure. I always did, I croaked. But it was the only way to secure a future. I did my duty. The human youngling watched as my oxygen supply dissipated. His vicious eyes watered. I knew he was thinking about Bengaluru, contemplating how my orders leveled dozens of cities like it. The poor thing never understood the bleak necessity. The constricting pain centered around my larynx, and my field of vision began to diminish. Awareness was receding, like sinking into a vast ocean. Struggling didn't seem important anymore. I felt like I lived a good life. A meaningful one.
Put Kelsey down, Dad. Please.
Arjun's voice sounded as though it came from underwater.
He saved my life from the other two. Multiple times. I don't want him killed.
The adult human growled a reply I didn't register. Its voice was charged with bellowing savagery, a preview of what Arjun would sound like at full maturity. I didn't want to see him transform into an unstable beast, constantly beleaguered by the need to chase. That sickening development was the reason why pups were supposed to be exterminated. The kid offered a plea that was incoherent as my eyes fluttered shut with grim realization. The rope released its grip, and I plummeted back to the earth with a muted sensation. The little predator poked at my beak, but I couldn't move a muscle. The world faded away, leaving me helpless at the paws of the warlike monsters. Memory transcription subject. Slanik, then null space core. Date, standardized human time, October 18th, 2136. Marcel leaned over the destroyer's railing, allowing the salt water to splash his face. The predator's eyes stared where the towering skyline of New York City had once been. His loved ones were in one of the nearby bunkers, perhaps buried beneath a mountain of rubble. The human resolved to search for Nulia and Lucy, but I feared his reaction if they weren't found alive. The American military sent most available service members to the remnants of its largest city once the environment was deemed safe. Rescue prospects weren't promising for the main hopes, so efforts would be focused on the city outskirts. With the traditional naval ports and space docking sites pulverized, the boat would allow alien visitors to touch down. My skin crawled at the thought of the Arks landing on Earth. I remembered what the Greys had done on the bombed-out cradle. It terrified me that they might get a taste for human flesh. What if the survivors, like Marcel, were rounded up into a cattle ship? The thought of him being caged or tortured again filled me with despair. Minutes from now, those monsters were going to be walking onto this very deck. I couldn't stop focusing on that image. Every instinct compelled me to hurl myself overboard. The Terrans were in no condition to protect me. I didn't believe for a second that those emotionless predators were genuinely here to help. The red-haired human studied his reflection.
Shit. Do you remember the first time we chatted online, Sonic?
You said hello. I sat at my keyboard for 2 hours trying to envision your true intent, I muttered. I was terrified to talk to a predator.
Wait, that's why you didn't answer right away. I mean, I was nervous too, but more about fucking up first contact.
Mars. All I could think was, what have I done? After several bouts of crying, multiple drafted messages to Republic Emergency Services to drop out of the program.
You asked me with no context or greeting what I saw when I looked in the mirror.
Marcel didn't finish the anecdote, instead tilting his head in consideration. At the time, the human answered,
A mouth, a nose, 2 eyes and ears. I'd be concerned if that changed.
The horrors of my imagination evaporated with laughter. I felt guilty that I had been so preoccupied with his appearance in the beginning. The worry creases on his forehead aged him by a decade, as did the blemish of the scars on his cheek. By comparison, my friend's paralyzing gaze had been full of life with that snarl he couldn't contain. I wanted to remember the humans as that optimistic race, affectionate and carefree. Whatever compromises our beloved predators had to make, I wouldn't let them change my perspective. I see a survivor. Swallowing my nerves, I propped myself over the railing. My grey fur was a matted mess, and my slender ears were pinned in terror. Two of them, actually. Please, don't let the Axer eat me. He ruffled the stray tuft on my head.
I'm scared too, buddy. I have nightmares about the meeting that immobilized Gajid. Then eating you on Nulia. Is it wrong to admit that?
No. Your feelings are important too. You're just really good at acting strong.
Key word. Acting.
An angular craft rocketed down from the cloud cover, and I squeezed my tail around the human's wrist. The curvature of the ship's belly suggested it was stocked with missiles. It was brimming with weaponry from every angle. The engine roared as it completed its atmospheric descent, following the Terran glide slope. The Arks of vessels found onto the open deck, personnel eyed it warily. There's a human sniper watching them from the mast. I wonder if the Greys noticed. Better hope my friends can react quicker than those demons can snap me in half. Paralyzing terror coursed through my bloodstream as dozens of Arcs lumbered out into the open. They lugged some supply crates onto the deck and waved for the humans to collect them. Terran personnel scurried over to sort through the offerings. I could see in the primates' eyes that they were concerned about opening up a cattle gift. One Arxa was directing the others, with a cracked skin around its eyes suggesting its age. Its nostrils flamed with obvious hunger, entranced by the whiff of Venlil in the breeze. Ghastly reptilian eyes snapped my way, and yellow teeth flared in a ferocious snarl. Why had Marcel's benign canines ever frightened me? As the enemy commander began angling toward us, it leaned forward as it walked, poised to drop into a primal lunge in a heartbeat. Its pupils were darker than the frigid side of Venlil Prime, and its grub scales glistened like obsidian. I could see the saliva coagulating around its lips.
It's okay, Slanik. I'm right here.
Marcel growled. My heart hammered so furiously that I swayed on my feet. The human caught me with steady hands. All thoughts were shutting down, like a hard reset to the noggin. Every conscious impulse seemed to propel myself into the ocean. My brain signals weren't registering. I sank my claws into the human's forearm, whimpering like wounded prey. Tears poured down my face, dripping onto his pale skin. Marcel massaged my scruff and tried to stop me from shaking uncontrollably. His gentle touch wasn't enough to counter an Arxa standing right across from me. How could we have ever considered such an abomination sapient? It was the spitting image of death itself. Nothing motivated it other than its appetite and cruelty.
Greetings. I'm going to assume you're in charge, since you have a Venlil attached.
The Arx's warm breath hit me on the cheek as it spoke in a reverberating roar.
My name is Chief Hunter Isif. We understand this was the United Nations headquarters, so I decided to accompany this landing party.
Marcel cleared his throat.
What can I do for you?
A faint sliver of awareness crept back in. I didn't understand why my human wouldn't point this monster toward the actual officers. And far away from us, I wanted to study the vegetarian's expression, but I couldn't turn my eyes away from the Arxa. It hadn't stopped staring at me from the moment it approached.
Requesting permission to set up emergency housing. I can have structure that basically is organized in a day.
I sit back.
I don't think that will be an issue.
The red-haired woman said,
If you're aiding search and rescue, would you come with me to a neighborhood called Midwood? The people in those bunkers are a UN priority.
Gladly. I'll pick several of my finest to accompany you.
Oh, and tell your soldiers not to desecrate any human bodies.
Cut it out. We don't eat each other, whatever the Federation told you. So why would any of us want to eat humans?
The Chief Hunter's eyes lingered on me, the actualization of every nightmare I ever had. My spine pressed against Marcel's chest, using his muscular form for support. Every muscle in my body felt weak as jelly, and my nerves were overstimulated beyond salvaging. I wanted to crawl under the rock and never show my face again. The Arxa sighed, slinking off with the swish of its tail. It conversed with some Terran personnel for a moment, then issued emphatic orders. Several Greys filed into a human helicopter, a strange aircraft that had twin blades on its roof. The racket stung my ears as the propeller revved to life.
Okay, I don't expect you to come with me, Slanik.
Marcel released a forceful exhale and set me back on my paws.
But getting to my family can't wait. I have to know.
So you're hitching a ride with the child-eating predators? What will Nelia think if she's alive? I spat. You just said you'd have nightmares about those things devouring her.
Using the Arxa will get me there quickest. I'm sorry. There's no line I won't cross. I have nothing to live for without them.
What about me? I care about you. After what we've been through together.
Don't make this about you, buddy. I get why Sovereign losing his family broke him down. If they're dead, so am I.
Marcel, please.
Go home, Slanik. I hope you succeed in all your future aspirations. Thank you for giving a predator like me a chance.
The red-haired human shouldered his rifle and duffel bag and limped over to the waiting helicopter. Those hazel eyes never so much as glanced back. His slender fingers were curled into a fist. Recollections of my predator, starving and beaten, darted through my mind. I could see those same hands pressed up against the glass as he reached out with the last of his strength. Marcel tried to protect me in his final moments too, through unimaginable pain. I can't let him throw his life away. I remembered how helpless I felt, watching the vegetarian held at gunpoint. The pain in his eyes had been like glass shards in my heart. The thought of never speaking to him again, and learning that the axe had chopped him up into little pieces, filled me with the same despair. How did my Terran friend expect me to abandon him to a senseless fate? Riding along on this suicide misadventure was out of the question, though. Marcel wasn't engaged in proper thinking right now. He needed someone to drill some sense into him. Humans were significantly weaker than the Arxer, so he
I think that's all the
when they
news.
ambushed him. Damn you! I scampered after the hobbling human, who was only a few paces from the chopper. I nursed you back from death's door, went with you to a Khajiit war zone, and stayed here when we all thought your Earth was going to be blasted to the core. Marcel clambered up into the chopper.
You've done enough. Go away, Slanek. Get lost.
And go home like none of this happened. I'm telling you as your friend not to do this. I need you safe and alive. And I don't care if that's making this about me. I bounded the last several steps and held myself at the human's leg in desperation. My hind legs scrabbled for traction on the floor. I struggled with all my might to pull the bulky predator off the helicopter. Marcel panted and shook me off with a grunt. The Arxer passengers watched with amusement. The human set his supplies on an empty seat adjacent to the cockpit. Chief Hunter Isif was ordering the Terran pilot he'd borrowed to take off. I had to get my friend out of here now. With panicked desperation, I yanked at his injured arm. Marcel could forgive me for the pain that caused later. It was the only way to mitigate his superior strength and save him from his own recklessness.
Shit!
He cursed.
Get the fuck off me!
The vegetarian's eyes dilated with frustration, and his cheeks turned that flushed shade of red that unnerved me, his teeth bared with obvious hostility. That was no human smile causing his jaw to tremble. I wasn't about to be scared away by growling, even if it made my throat go dry. He was never going to hurt me. Marcel pried my claws off him with predatory strength. His typical gentleness was gone. I kneeled in protest, but the human clenched his fingers into my scruff. He carried me toward the exit in cold silence and seemed ready to toss me outside. My legs flailed about in desperation, but the struggling didn't have much effect. The helicopter rose the first few feet off the ground. Chief Hunter Isif retreated from the cockpit and darted between Marcel and the exit. The Arxer commander slid the door shut, sealing off the escape route for both of us. Its eyes widened in confusion as it noticed me dangling like a pup from the human's hands.
Take a seat. There's room for you and the animal.
It snarled.
Throw the map overlay. This should be a short ride.
The aircraft was ascending rapidly, now above the mast in altitude. My heart sank in my chest, compounded by sheer panic. Jumping from this height would be suicide, though it might be better than being turned into cattle. Not only had I failed to get Marcel away from these monsters, but I had ended up escapeless with him. The red-haired human adjusted his grip, bringing me into the normal carrying position. I burrowed my head against his shirt, and he patted me with a sigh. Isif watched with keen interest as the Terran settled into his chosen seat. The vegetarian placed my shaking body on his lap and turned my chin toward the window with a delicate push. I was certain the other Arxer were gaping at us and salivating at the flesh on my skeleton. My hope was that my presence would stop the chase from killing Marcel. Little but a juicier target after all. That didn't lessen the dread in my heart. There was nothing worse than being trapped hundreds of feet above the ground with feral carnivores. Memory transcription subject, Slanek, then Lil Space Corps. Date, standardized human time, October 18, 2136. The tension was palpable as the Arxer occupants studied Marcel in silence. I gathered that the human didn't want to engage with them either. The predatory savagery from the cradle plagued my recollection, and the chilling screams of the unfortunate Khajiits echoed on loop. It would be all too easy for the Greys to gut either of us with the swipe of their fangs. Chief Hunter Isif dropped into the seat right next to us. The monster was inches away from me. It disregarded the shift in Marcel's body language. The human had leaned away, though there wasn't anywhere to go in a helicopter cabin. I got the impression his concern was for me, rather than himself. After the attack on Earth, it's like he doesn't care what happens to him. If I wasn't about to be carved up, I'd insist he seek help. Isif bared his teeth ferociously.
Well, I've introduced myself. What's your name, then, Lil?
Its voice was a discordant snarl, amplifying humanity's typical rumble by 1,000-fold. A pathetic squeak escaped from my throat, and I sobbed into Marcel's shirt. The vegetarian stroked my ear with patience when faced by the salty wetness soaking the fabric. I didn't know how even a persistent predator could be so calm in the face of such an eyesore. That scaly demon was sensory hell. I'd rather be hunted by Marcel's kind for hours than look at Isif for another
That's all.
second.
Oh, that's right there.
Okay. That was the response I expected.
The axe aside,
What are you called, human?
my human stiffened.
Marcel Fraser. But just Marcel is fine.
Alrighty.
Lil here.
Calling it a night.
His name is Slonic.
I knew you hadn't.
Alrighty. Good night, everyone. I'll finish these tomorrow. I hope. Maybe. Who knows?